o'clock. If you would all rise and please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I want to thank everybody for coming. Roll call this evening. We'll start at this end and everybody will introduce themselves.
Gary Lincoln.
Scott McVeigh.
Beverly Fickus.
Erwin Fuss.
And we have staff with us this evening, Paul Kelly, Kayla Falks, and Melissa Tinney. Thank you. First thing on the agenda is open time, so if there's anybody that wants to speak on any topic that's not on our agenda, and if there are agendas and packets in the back, but if anybody wants to speak of anything not on the agenda, now's the time to get up and speak. Or if you're not sure, you can go ahead and talk also.
Chair, Sandy put her name down.
Oh, okay.
Before we go any
Yes,
further.
we don't have a recorder.
Yes, that's
Oh,
what I was
yeah.
gonna say, the recorder's not here.
Okay.
Time out.
That's right.
Relax, Sandy.
I'm out, Sandy.
Kathy, your thoughts?
I wish I could store all that water when I got in my place yesterday.
Tell me about it. I got over 8 inches from the second snow forward on my property. Wow.
Well, if you look down my road, you'll see the high water mark where all the grass
Oh, yeah.
ended up on, and it's got 3 feet high.
Yeah.
I got tired of this thing sitting randomly on my desk, so I finally put it in the drawer, and then I forgot it.
Do we have to start over?
I think I am gonna start a little bit
Why
over.
don't you just say that you started
Yeah.
it today?
Yeah.
We'll call it a good hour.
Okay, so just for the record, tonight is Wednesday, March 15th, 6 p.m. We did start our meeting without the recorder, so we've already had the call to order, the pledge, and the roll call, and now we are at open time. So, Sandy?
Sandy Leonard, I just wanted to remind everybody that Thursday the 23rd, we'll be having a Firewise meeting at the community center. And I'm going to post some of these agendas around if anyone, and I have some extra copies if anybody would like one, you can have one before you leave. And I also brought a few more Cal Fire latest printouts. So, and then the June meeting, we've got Aaron Hathaway coming from Cal Fire, and he's got a really good presentation. Last fall, I went out to the college, they had a workshop, and he spoke for an hour, and he had a lot of really good information. So don't think this meeting, next month, we're gonna have another really good meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Anyone else wishing to speak at this time? Yes.
My name is Joanne Blomquist. I'm not sure if it's on the agenda or not, but I wanted to talk about what's going on with the treatment plant and if there's any dates that we will not have to boil water anymore. So,
Good question.
any answers?
Would you like me?
Yes, I would like you to. I got some comments, but yeah.
And one of my questions was, why did it take so long to notify us?
Well, I don't know about how long it took to notify, but I will say that on Thursday evening, which was the day we had 6 inches of snow, that afternoon, evening here, there was a significant power outage and surge up at the Whiskeytown plant. It blew out a couple of motors at the meat camp, just as an example, and it did one of the motors at the treatment plant, and it left a butterfly valve open. So raw water got into the system, according to Bill Mesa, about 5,000 gallons got into the system before they shut it off. And they then pumped well over 5,000 gallons back into the ponds, the treatment plant ponds, the backwash ponds to use that. So hoping to get as much, if not all, of that raw water out of the system, and obviously notify the state. So the state spent most of Thursday night and most of Friday analyzing the situation, and they are the ones that determine everything, and they were the ones that determined to put the boil water notice fairly late Friday. It was very late Friday that day.
Or midday, mid-afternoon, something.
4:45.
Yeah, it's just I consider that late in the day. So it was really all that. So, Bill, our chief plant operator, based on kind of traditional March water usage in the district, calculated that it would take a week or so for any of that water to get all the way through the system. And so, both Centerville and Clear Creek received the boil water notice, and he's pretty convinced, Bill, that they got all the water. I mean, but you can't prove that necessarily, and some of it could have been in the tank that they didn't get out. They thought it was all actually in the conduit, and he's been sending me notes all day today saying he's negotiating with the state to when and how they can test. He's come up with his own testing system, showing that everything's fine and that there's clean water everywhere. But every time he talks to the state, they say, well, we haven't come up with our approved testing method. So that we expect that it'll take a week, so it'll probably be through the weekend before we are able to lift it. That was probably more than you knew. That's all I know at this point. We're working with the
I have a
state.
question then.
Sure.
This water, that raw water that got through, if it really did, it was not water just out of the lake. It was chlorinated, wasn't it?
No.
It wasn't chlorinated.
No.
I thought the chlorine came in before it went to the plant.
Well, no, it actually is after that. So yes, that is one of the ways they then obviously sent chlorinated water to chase it. Once they've sucked it out, they sent chlorinated water, and that's how they're testing, and they know that the water's fine because it's got this residual chlorine all the way to the end of the system.
And then the other question I had, Joanne, how did you get notified? Was it through your cell phone or email?
I think I got a cell phone message and an email message,
Okay.
both of them. My concern was that we could have been drinking tainted water, or raw water, for a day, because I was drinking water out of the tap all day. What is the chances that water wasn't potable?
Zero chance. That is one of the reasons why the state waited. They knew, based on all the data that the chief plant operator and their testing, is that all calculations and all testing showed there's none of that raw water got even past halfway through the conduit by Friday night or Saturday or Sunday.
For anybody who hasn't, you can sign up to get the alerts. Or you do go online, and there's a little sidebar where you can click on it, and you can get alerts on your cell phone, and of course on email as well.
Yeah, and I would just, I was gonna report on this later, but it's a good time to do it. We have received a lot of calls inquiring, and
Please.
we have received a lot of calls inquiring, and it's given us an opportunity to sign up a lot more people on that list, as well as update a lot of accounts that had either an expired email or no email or a cell phone that didn't work anymore, even if that that person was still in that location. And I would say that, you know, one of the things that I'm hopeful for, if we do think that, you know, updating or replacing our billing software, a lot of the newer versions have capabilities to make, you know, you can't even create an account or whatever, you have to get a cell phone or something. That way we have something that we can communicate as quickly as possible.
So one of my concerns was the news. So 7R had it on Friday night, and they also had it on another night. And it said that that people would be notified in writing. And
That's not correct.
I don't care if it's not correct, it's what they said. So that's the perception that people are going to get, is that I'm gonna be notified in writing. And how do we combat that then? Because that's not what we're going to do. And if that came from the state, it came from the state, because I think you said that report, that alert notification came from the state, and that's where 7R got it, not from us, from the state. So how do we reflect that back correctly? Because our customers are gonna be upset. They're going to be rightly upset because they're not gonna get that notification. And we do have too many people that do not have cell phones or don't have email. Is that reverse 911 a possibility? And how much is costly? Is that something that we can check with Shastcom to see if they could do a reverse 911?
Can I add
So,
to that?
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Since it came, and that's how I heard of it, on the news, can we ask them to announce that also, since it would be a free service?
Yeah, so combination of things, we have inquired and not received an answer yet from the state. Like, did you tell the news that you were gonna send out a mail notification?
Yeah.
Or did you tell them that we were? And that, how do you can't do that. And then we haven't got an answer to that yet, and we have not followed up yet, but we would follow up with the news. The challenge always is, as you know, is it's not bleeding, so it's not leading. So hopefully the good news will get out versus just the bad news. As you know, the bad news goes around the world 7 times before the truth gets their shoes on.
Any comments about it, Terry?
Could I just mention something here, if you don't mind?
No.
Just take a couple of minutes. Sandy knows this, because she's been around here a long time, but I've lived in this district for 50 years. And when I moved here, the district was only 6 years old. You moved here before me.
58.
And yeah, and it was only 1 year old at that time. It actually started in 67. But I do remember when I wanted water, I turned on the faucet and I had to wait about 10 seconds for all the dirt to come out before I got clean water. And the reason why, and I drank that, and I'm still here, but the reason why is because when we first put the system in, there were only 2 filter trains. And so like during the summertime, if you remember, 80% of the water that we drank was right out of the lake.
It was blended water.
Called blended water.
Blended water.
Yeah. Now during winter time, it got a little more filtered, but during the summertime, it was just raw water.
Yeah,
And-
chlorinated.
But it was chlorinated, absolutely. It was clean chlorinated water. And then along came about 1995, and the state stepped in and said, you gotta build a treatment plant for all of it. The agriculturalists here really complained about that, as I recall, because they didn't want to put treated water on their fields and pay for it, but consequently they wound up having to do it. Now, we complained about that at the time, and that's the $7.55. That's on your bill, by the way. We're still paying for that plant. It's gonna be paid for by about another 8 years. 4? That's only 4? Wow, time flies when you're having fun. This is great. But that's what that $7.55 is for, and the state forced us into doing that. We didn't want to do that, because we were happy with all that dirty water coming out of it, because it was cheap.
We had nothing. People
But
had
anyway,
wells for
so
nothing.
the times have changed. We want clean water. We deserve clean water. We've got the capacity to clean that water. And so people are angry when they don't get the clean water, or when something gets in the way of them perceiving that they don't have clean water. So I can understand what the problem is. How to fix it is gonna be another thing altogether, because it seems like what we're dealing with is one thing the state's saying, the thing that we're doing, and also the time element to try to get out. And then some people in this district, they're not hooked up to the alert system, and as you say, they may even not have
Cell phones
email or
or
cell
anything.
phone, you
Yeah.
know? So how do you do that? Reverse 911 is the way to do it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just wanted to bring that up.
I think too, Madam Chair, I don't want to belabor this point, but, I think the last time the district had a boil water for district-wide was in 2021. So what this does is it points out to, once we're done with this thing, we need to like, okay, what is our communication method? There's a lot of new people, everybody here is pretty much new. Coordinating with Centerville, how we get the message out as well, since they're impacted. They're a more condensed district, so I think they've got some testing protocols that may get them out. What exactly the message is, so it's clear, and then how we actually get to everybody is the other side of it as well as answering the implied question that the state didn't think about when they developed the boil water notice and they had it sent out and had us send it out. They should have put in there that, this is they did have some of it, this is a precaution, and also, there's no chance that any of this raw water made it into the system prior to this notice. I mean, all those kind of things that you don't really think about until after it's done and you're kind of in a panic to get it done.
Yeah. Okay. Was there anyone else that wanted to speak on that subject?
Different subject.
Okay, anybody else on this subject?
I just was
Could you
wondering,
please, yeah.
Could you state your name for us, please?
my name is Catherine. I was curious, does the district, because I got it via text, does the district send that out, or is it the state that sends that out? And if so, is there any way, because you said 7 days, any way we could get an update within, 48 hours that says it's going to take about 7 days, just to let us know how long,
That you're not being forgotten.
Yeah.
At the mercy of the
Just
state.
an update.
Because we do know that they'll say 7 days, we'll send you notice, and then the notice never comes. So I get it.
Super good point.
Yeah.
So, in the case, I'm guessing that you got your text from us. We have our own system. In other words, the state does theirs, and then our customers have.
Because I signed up
Yes.
your website.
So, super good feedback. Had not thought about that. So we probably should send an update.
Yeah, especially since we don't think that the boil water is going to be up on Friday.
Right.
So, yeah,
So,
very good point.
Thank you for that.
Yes, thank you.
In case, right now, you said that there's really zero possibility of raw water, but I didn't know that. So I've got little ones at home, a baby, and
Yeah.
we've been using bottled water and we've been boiling, so it's kind of,
So it's the state is overly cautious, and that's a good
Yeah.
thing. That's okay.
thank you.
You bet.
Joanne?
There was a front page article this morning in the Record Searchlight about, let's see, what do they call it? They call it per and polyfluorinated substances in water. And that we need to start testing for those if we haven't been. And my question is, have we been testing for those?
I think that's a Bill question.
Yeah, that is a good question.
It is a good question. This is through the chair, if you're interested. PFAS, PFOS is kind of the acronym that they have. It's one of those emerging contaminants that are issues of concern. It's a really challenging thing for the last 3 or 4 years. Water districts throughout the state and in my previous positions have been active in trying to figure out what and if there will be any regulations related to it, and what those regulations might be based on. Up until very recently, there was the promulgation of regulations and testing for PFAS and PFOS without any known health impacts to it. There does appear to be some of those, and so they're looking at it. The primary source that we've always been told of this is mostly from, it's been used in a fire retardant, so a lot of airports are dealing with this issue. In other words, it was a fire retardant on airports. So how it's identified in areas other than that is still not positive. And what the testing protocol is not as clear yet. So I don't know actually if Bill's been having the labs test for it or not, but we will check on it.
Yeah.
We'll do whatever the state,
If we could have an update at the next meeting then on that.
whatever the state.
We do test.
But I did want to give you a little background on it is, and it's, again, it leads, that's going to go around the world about.
We do test.
Oh, yeah.
I think that,
Extensively.
what you read it, I think it's all on the website too, if I'm not mistaken. And,
But
it's a long list of stuff.
Yeah.
Sandy Winters again, little history. I got my first water delivery July 5th, 1967.
67.
67. And, we all knew we were drinking blended water, and we weren't worried about it. We should have been because of all the mining operations up there. We were drinking arsenic, mercury, molybdenum, however you say it, all those chemicals that the miners use, and there's a lot of runoff on those hills. I don't know what the shelf life is for those chemicals, but we all survived. I don't remember anybody getting sick. But now we've had that car fire 5 years ago. We got all that stuff coming down into the lake from that fire. And burnt boats, who knows what all was down in there, it hasn't been cleaned up. I remember when they were putting the lake in, they cleaned everything. There was big, huge bonfires going on out there. If you drove 299 going west, you could see them out there. I think they even tore up all the old town, Whiskey Town, everything. They moved the cemeteries. They did a pretty good job of cleaning the bottom of that lake. But we had that blended water in the 1986 Safe Drinking Act that was voted in. And I remember the district fought it for a long time. We didn't have the money to enlarge our filtration plant and do all the required state rules and regulations that they wanted until we got that $4.5 million grant.
Thank you, Sandy. Anyone else? Okay, moving to our consent agenda.
Okay, well, Madam Chair, just one quick item of, on our agenda as a reminder that at 6:30, we do have a public hearing that we would do for that ordinance 2304. So it looks like everything's gonna work out fine. In other words, if we'd actually gotten to item 6C prior to 6:30, we would have had to skip it. But we can go through our other items and then take that up at 6:40, if that's what it is. Also, just mentioning on the minutes for 2:18, 2:15, and 2:08, we did receive from the chair a couple of items. For example, on the February 8th special meeting, we fixed the roll call. We fixed Emily Rankin's spelling of her name. It has an E instead of an A that it's supposed to have. I also would mention for the February 15th, 6 o'clock, we fixed the roll call by adding, though the chair obviously calls the meeting to order, she should be also called out in the roll call. Under bills paid, in the minutes for that consent calendar items, Director Fuss questions the voided check for employee lunch, not the void for it's just, little things when you're typing it up. We also added Director McVeigh versus just McVeigh on page 4 of that, as well as later in the minutes. And then for the Finance Committee minutes, I had a dangling sentence there that we removed, and we carried over the incorrect spelling of Emily Rankin again. But we fixed that. So just so you know, I want the board to know whenever you get around to approving these, you've at least started with some of the fixes in the minutes. In case you have any more, please let us know.
I had given to Melissa a couple of corrections. And one was, she had been talking about the weather forecast
Right.
and NOAA, and she had put NOAA.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, we put NOAA, National Oceanic and
Atmospheric Administration, yes.
And then there was another sentence in there somewhere on the 15th, that didn't quite make sense, and I think Kayla's gonna look at that and find out what that, how to complete it.
If you don't mind, through the chair, this is in reference to item C, which was the emergency SCADA electrical repairs. There was ordinance to sign the funding agreement with the state. We'll make this clear. It's not clear in here now. With the state, and sign an agreement with Pace Engineering to do the project. So those were obviously missing, and thank you to Director McVeigh for seeing those. I also just want to mention that under item C, we're missing the payroll for 3/2/23, so we'll include that in the next month's meeting as well. And then, maybe just to preempt a question, Director or Chair Fickus asked about, under the bills paid, there's an item in there near the bottom related to the USBR water payments. And just for maybe the community and the board's purposes, I think I explained this before, but it's still complicated and challenging. The Bureau, when they actually make an allocation, so one thing we haven't experienced at the district for a while is that they actually did allocate us water this year. They actually require that you prepay for the water that you're scheduled to receive in 2 months in advance. So on March 1st, we're required to pay for March and April's water delivery. And so the way that works is you supply a schedule for your water to the Bureau and when you're going to take it, just like when we did McConnell water schedule. So in this case, we scheduled for irrigation water, 30 acre feet in March and 55 for M&I water. And in April, we're scheduling 85 acre feet of irrigation water and 70 acre feet of M&I water. And then you take, many of you saw this last time, and it's later in your packet, this rate sheet, and you take your tier 1 rate for the irrigation water at $39.73, and you take your tier 1 rate for the M&I water at $33.13, and when you calculate all that out, that's your $8,710.20. So that's what you pay them. So then on March 31st, so for the end of the month, we will then know exactly what of that 30 and 55 that we used. And so that, if let's say we use 25 acre feet of irrigation water for March, so we've overpaid for 5. So that rolls into our next payment, which would then be for May. Okay, so on April 1st, we actually have to pay the May cost, which were scheduled for water. And the other thing then is, back to this sheet, is that we now know what exactly went through the system and we used from the Bureau for both irrigation and M&I water. And we take what exactly we received on those months, and that's when we add in a payment for the, restoration funds for irrigation and M&I. So that's why when you read my notes in the past, I said we pay for our scheduled water, and then once we use it, we then pay these bottom sections. So we pay the full amount, the $39.73 and the $12.02, regardless. It's just the timing of when that gets paid. So hopefully that you understand.
Yep, I
Okay.
do.
I knew you did, but it was a good question. There was a question about the Employment Development Department. That's actually the state taxes that are withheld, so that's actually a liability. In other words, when we withhold taxes from people's pay, we're immediately liable to the state to get that. We're also liable to the employees to make sure that we pay that. Also on this list, the board might recall that they approved that capacity charge reimbursement, so that shows up as a check on this one. And I think that was a few that I had. On this bills paid, the WIN Act repayment shows up. One of our WIN Act payments, $50,000. Actually, a little bit misidentified here. That's actually for 12/22. So we have a payment that's due now. We're going to process for this first quarter.
First fiscal quarter, I think is, or I guess.
Well, it was the first year quarter, but yeah, it's third quarter fiscal. But remember, the payment schedule on that thing is on a calendar year.
So this one was, this payment here was a fourth quarter.
Right.
Okay.
It was a fourth quarter calendar, our second fiscal quarter, but the WIN Act repayment is on a calendar year.
All right, so Erwin has some questions.
Yeah, I had, well, just one question. I'm looking at the profit and loss sheet for the activity report, and I notice in the income from July to December, I don't see any,
What line are you at?
there is no line. I'm looking-
Read the number over here.
There is no line.
Okay,
No,
but can
there's
you,
a-
there's
I
a
don't know.
number.
No, let me explain.
Okay,
I don't see a line for property tax.
Actually, I did.
So,
And now, it could be that, well, it should be in there because
we did, I think, I don't know, we've been trying, and I guess maybe I should introduce the fact that we do have some activity reports, and the nice thing is we're able to get them all on the one page. We've been working very hard, and you're gonna see it when we get to our item E, which is our 6-month budget review. I believe the reason it's not on here is that the activity, there was no activity. In other words, we didn't receive a property tax payment from the county until January. And so this runs through December.
Right.
so if you take a look at the,
In the 6-month combined,
it's here.
it's, item,
So
49,300.
Yeah, that's later on.
And that
I'm talking about
shows
this.
that in the budget, we had
Talking about this.
170,000, but we have not collected anything.
Then usually, there's the first installment's in April, we get a first installment shortly after that. And then the second installment's in December, we get another payment after that. All total in the year, it's about $350,000. So somewhere in here ought to show up.
Well, and again,
I
under.
know it shows up in the budget.
Yes,
Yeah.
when we get to our budget to actual, you will see that there's a line item there,
Well, that's fine.
under revenue and
It
tax.
doesn't show it here.
It's not gonna show it here because we received no property tax disbursement from the county between July of 2022 and December 31st of 2022.
Then this doesn't make sense, because somewhere in there, it's gotta show that you had some money.
We did not receive any money.
Well,
from
maybe
that.
not from July to
Correct.
September.
So
That's correct.
basically,
That's why it's not there.
the traditional December payment
Yes,
disbursement did
then the
not
total
come.
income is not correct on this.
It is for that 6-month period, Erwin, because that's the actual income that the district received from July 1 through December
Understand what I'm
31.
saying? Sure, it didn't show up in here, but it showed up before that, so it ought to be in here somewhere.
It shows up on the budget versus actual,
That's a
under the
different
budget
thing,
item.
that's a different thing, we haven't got there yet. I'm just talking about this profit and loss. And
Okay, well, wait,
It
real quick.
distorts the actual income, because we should have more than, what, $170,000?
So,
Anyway, I'm just bringing that up.
it's a good point. I would just mention, and you know, our bookkeeper is sitting here. For July and August, we have yet to fully reconcile those revenues. So you're gonna see these zeros in the base rate charge because they're all residing within the water sales. And again, it's really clear. I know it's challenging when you have 6 months of activity, but this is the first time we're actually able to get you something that's reasonably accurate. One of the other things we're doing, unlike the previous system, and I shared this with the finance committee, we're getting a lot more granular on our different accounts. In other words, you're gonna see a lot more accounts, you're gonna see a lot more expense accounts. And again, I just would remind you that this is these are activities. In July, we did not receive a disbursement of property taxes.
Right, I would.
We
what do you
did
think
not
it was?
receive any in August, or September, or October, or November, or December.
Yeah, you wouldn't get it until December. or
We
January.
didn't get it until January. So when, next month, when we bring you the third fiscal quarter activities, which is gonna be January, February, and March, you're gonna see a big property tax thing.
I understand that, but what I'm looking at here gives a distorted picture of the income. Because okay, this is from July to December, but from January to July or June, you did get some income
Oh, yeah.
from that.
Oh, yeah.
It should have showed up on this somewhere.
Director Fuss,
Okay.
the way it happens is that with income, you record it in the month that it is received. So the county did not give us those taxes.
I understand that.
Right, so it does not get back recorded
I
into
understand
months
that.
that it wasn't received in.
Then this is not correct.
It is
That's what I'm
correct.
saying, because
No.
that distorts the income.
Correct.
Let's move on.
Well,
Anyway, let's move on, let's move on.
I think just, even though it's maybe just a nuance, this is a picture of the income for the first half of the year that does not reflect what we actually have in the accounts, because you're right, you have all your residual income from the previous year, fiscal year, but that's in short. I would just mention, like I said, July and August, we're gonna see a better picture of this when we get to our budgets to actual, and we can have a lot more conversations and explanations of different elements of things. But, again, we really wanted to finally, after a lot of work, to try to get these accounts broken up just for the community and the other board members that haven't been involved in the finance committee. You know, a lot of expenses were paid out of QuickBooks from July through December, and they weren't necessarily put into expense accounts that made any correlation with our budget. So we've been spending the time to do that, and Melissa's been trying to move all that stuff around and try to get that resolved as best we can. And, you know, we obviously, in the finance committee, can report on this, but we have had multiple conversations with them to try to get the accounts in a better order so they make more sense. And I think they're getting closer to that. But I just want to point out to one, and I'm going to point it out to you when we get to the item E, which is 6,000, which is payroll, expenses, salary, and wages. You know, that's all just lump sum into that one area. We haven't gotten it broken out by treatment, distribution and all the rest, which is a little closer to what the budget has, because we actually have to do that actually for treatment in particular for our expenses. But again, that'll get, as time goes on, we'll get that better broken out.
So just for the public that didn't attend the couple of finance committee meetings in fact, is that on some of these, activity reports, there's a bunch of zeros in some of the months. And it's like, okay, why? Well, they never got put into the right place to begin with, back from July through December. And Melissa came on board in November, late November, mid-November. So she's been trying to backtrack and find, most of that funds are just in the general account. So you're having to really backtrack and get that. And so, yeah, we're questioning all those things because there's money that's in like suspense. Okay, what is that? And she's having to go back and try to find where these things are. We'll get there eventually, but it is frustrating on our part, frustrating for you, and I'm sure really frustrating for Melissa. So, okay. Any questions other questions on any of this? Okay. Any other questions did you have on?
No.
Okay, and no questions on payroll, so then I need a motion for our consent agenda.
I move we accept the consent agenda as stated.
I'll second it.
And amended.
And amended, yes.
Yeah.
Because we did amend a few things,
Okay.
as stated and amended.
So I have a motion by Director McVeigh to accept the consent agenda as amended, and a second by Director Lincoln. And just to note, there isn't any payment on there to Smalley Reese, so all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. So old business, we are going to switch and go down to 6C and.
Madam Chair, actually, A is really easy, there's nothing to report.
Okay.
Just a question on it.
Yes.
How much is that bill again?
What's that?
How much was the bill for the reconciliation?
It was like
About
26,000 and
Oh,
change.
26?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought it was more like 50,000.
No, and then remember, they put 26,000 in the letter. The bill that they came up with has 24,000, which obviously didn't make sense. And then their justification wasn't right. And then just real quick on the WIN Act, we have, the Bureau was supposed to have a big meeting last week, and we haven't heard the results of that, and when they were gonna tell us exactly when we owe, and how much we owe.
The final payment,
Yeah.
the actual job did make the final payment, so, because we're gonna have to address that when we do know it.
All right, probably, I'm guessing next month we'll have to put together a strategy for that, yeah. And then, Madam Chair, just on B, I really left this on one more time since we had the water use restrictions and the board in November waived the penalties and then reinstated them, but the direction was to look at them every month, so I just kind of left it here. It's superfluous because once we approve or look at the next item, hopefully we won't have more penalties, right?
Right.
Unnecessary, but just so that we can not have to go back to those.
Okay, are you wanting some action on that?
Need action?
Or was it, that was a discussion item, wasn't it?
Discussion action.
Or was it?
So we wanna get rid of the
I'm
penalty.
assuming you're gonna lift the penalties, because that's what's proposed in the next item, which is the ordinance.
So this
But maybe
is
we
the
should,
penalties for February then, right?
probably should do that.
Well, there's no need for penalties in February.
Right.
I don't know.
I don't
No.
think so either, but we need a motion.
Okay,
Well,
well,
the meter reading should have started this week, right?
It's been going on this week.
would the recommendation be to
Yeah.
go away with them? Yeah, I'd make the motion that we not have the penalty for February then.
I'll second that.
Okay, and before we go on, though, we have a first and a second on the floor. Was there any comments from the floor in regards to removing the penalties for February?
If you want to pay penalties, raise your hand.
Okay, so we have a motion by Director Fust and a second by Director McVeigh that we terminate penalties for the month of February. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None, motion carried. Okay, now we're to the public hearing. This is for ordinance 2023-04, water shortage drought ordinance.
Yes.
Okay.
And, so, Madam Chair, as we, had a special meeting last, week, and, we're able to, review some of this item in preparation of, putting this, out the public notice for this, public hearing, as well as, putting on the final touches to the draft. As mentioned, and as the board recalls, they had suggested that we really need to, and I'm recommending we need to rescind the restricted 22-01 ordinance, which is the emergency water shortage ordinance that we've been under up until now, and that based on our document, which is the drought planning and water shortage policy, there's actually some copies still back in the back, that the current Bureau allocation falls right between stage 2 and stage 3, and based on the amount of water that's available, that we should go to a stage 2, which calls for voluntary conservation using best management practices, and for monitoring this ordinance, etc., by both the district and the customers, and that there's no penalties in this ordinance. So that's the main really good news on that. Again, I left a lot of the calculation stuff that we had from the last time, from the last meeting. If you want to go over that again, we can. But I would just point you to the ordinance itself. Again, based on recommended edits from board members prior to and subsequent to the meeting last week. What you have before you is a cut down version of our old ordinance. It has some recitals related to the amount of water that is provided to us, the 35% irrigation water, 75% historical use for M&I, and this also points out that it falls in between in our drought planning and water shortage policy, and then it has all of your different recitals. This version, we could have removed all of the F, fines and penalties section, and just not even had it in the ordinance. And if the board wants to do that, we can do that. I've kind of left it in there just so that it's clear that there's no penalties, no fines. So in other words, at least it's not silent somehow, and somehow not understand that. Again, the allocation restrictions, which on the old ordinance was, we all know, is 75%, 45 ACs. So this one talks about stage 2, and that it's all about conservation measures, new service allocation applications. As F is the fines and penalties. Really says that there are no violations or penalties in stage 2 water storage declaration. Board members mentioned under variances that we should include applications available for district customers for new agricultural connections, health and safety, medical schools, and others. Currently, we don't call out the new ag, but in our policies, you can apply to get new ones. We just
Well, because in the past, and especially this one, it says no new ag accounts to be established.
right.
And we want to make sure, because that happened, I think a year ago, the board approved on a case-by-case basis that ag application.
Yeah, and I think it just makes a lot of sense that stage 2 still has that kind of new ag connection restrictions, but it needs to be in this ordinance that if somebody wants a new ag, they can come and get a variance to do that, or ask for one, and depending on where we are in the year and our allocation, and if there's any changes or no changes, it'll be a lot easier to handle that.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, I'm done.
All right, thank you.
I'll wait before,
Just,
wait, one thing I have to say. Madam Chair,
Yes,
will you please bang the gavel and say the public hearing on this item is now open?
okay,
Is it open now?
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
Now it is.
I still have questions that.
Oh, yeah, but this puts the questions on the public hearing.
Oh,
Right,
okay.
so it's,
I just think,
So I'm opening this item for public hearing.
okay, could you do us a favor? I noticed that some people in the audience that haven't attended some of the other meetings and kind of go over the Bureau of Reclamation letter so that everybody understands the quandary we're in right now and trying to assess what we're gonna do.
Yep.
Right now, we get 1,698 acre feet for municipal, industrial, and about 4,562 acre feet for irrigation. But the letter obviously states there could be drastic restrictions, so I think the public needs to know that as long as it comes in like this, we're good. But we could be cut back to 0 irrigation and 50% of the 2,236,
2265 is.
of the M&I water, so that's the potential. And because of that, we went ahead last meeting and agreed to purchase 500 acre feet of common water as an insurance policy.
Well, Madam Chair, I would just point to some items in the packet. So it's not always clear on how your water allocation calculations are done. As mentioned, the Bureau did send a letter that said that we got 35% of our historic municipal and industrial use. Their calculations of the historical use is based on 2017, 18, and 19 average by the district.
You stated 35%, it's actually 75%.
I'm sorry, you're right, it's irrigation. So you take your 75% of that historic average, which is 2,265 acre feet, and that's where you come up with, as mentioned, the 1,699 acre feet of municipal irrigation water, or industrial water. And then for irrigation water, you would get 35%. And some might say, is that 35% of the 2265? Is that 35? What is that 35%? So it's both in the Bureau's documentation related to their calculations for water allocation. And also, I called and then sent an email and actually sent them our numbers and got the Bureau to specifically tell me that it's 35% of your contract water minus your historical use of M&I water. So in this case, it's 13,035 acre feet of water times 35%, which gives you the 4,500 acre feet of irrigation water. Now, a couple things that's in the Bureau, the second paragraph, there are contingencies about how solid this preliminary allocation is going to be. It mentions caveats like hydrology, pending court decisions, interim operations plan, and temperature management plan. And I will just say from the regulatory side, one of my biggest concerns is that all this rain is going into the central part of the state, and that there's going to be a lot of water released now, and then in April, they're going to go, hey, we don't have any water for the fish something or other, and they're going to tell the Bureau, we got to send a bunch of water down. And that's our water, that's our 35% running down there, and they're going to come back with some changes. So in the next page of the background, I actually have some examples of if they reduced us, and so how that works. So just again, to reiterate, once the ag irrigation allocation gets to 25%, each reduction of the irrigation water has a commensurate reduction of the M&I water. So you could be at 25% agriculture or irrigation, 75% M&I. As soon as you go to 15% irrigation water, you would be at 65% M&I. And so that's how it ratchets down. And then if you get to 0% irrigation, you would be at 50% for municipal and industrial use. That's how that gets stepped down. So for example, let's say they decided because of a lot of other factors, suddenly we had a historically warm, April or whatever else it might be. They could come back and say, we're going to drop you to 5% irrigation and 55% historic M&I. So that would be 1,246 acre feet of M&I and 651 feet for irrigation, which when combined is about what the water use for the district was last year when we were in very restricted water usage times. So that's why I think the board, in my opinion, did a very prudent thing to buy some insurance and have some Econo water, because we really don't know. Obviously, we have a lot of water right now, but it could change like that.
Right.
And that's part of the challenge. And I think, you know, combination of this ordinance needs to get us to stage 2, because it's clear that we have a better water than last year. But we also, you know, we may have to come back and change it.
Yeah.
You know, if there's changes, we might have to go to stage 3. Or maybe it'll just keep raining so much, they're gonna come back and say, we're gonna lift all restrictions and we can really roll.
That's what I'm looking for.
There you go.
So are there any questions from the board on this
Yeah.
particular ordinance?
Well, you opened it to the public, but I do have one question.
You asked yours, and I'd like to make a comment.
Okay. I'm a little confused on this because it says here that.
Where are you?
Oh, I'm under use restrictions.
Can you tell me what?
I'm going to. We have for our domestic use, 1,699 acre feet plus the 500, so it adds up to 2,199. And it says here that stage 1 voluntary reductions of 10% for all customers in the district and 15% for agriculture irrigation customers. So the 2,199 is subject to voluntary 10% reductions by the folks out there, and the 4,563 acre feet of ag water is subject to a 15% reduction.
No, not necessarily. Yes.
It's
So,
confusing.
again,
It
the
seems to say
consumption,
that.
the consumption limits, so it doesn't, the stage 2 declaration does not have consumption limits, but implements the stage 1 condition that seeks 10%, that's district-wide. And then all of the district customers through district. Then stage 2 in our policy, on top of the stage 1, so 10% is encouraged by everybody. Existing agriculture may ask to reduce consumption by 15%. And that is the way this thing is written, I'm sorry to say, which is, for the planning committee, this will be one of our next things we're gonna talk about, fixing.
It just seems to me that if we got 4,563 feet, acre feet of ag water available to us, why are we voluntarily cutting back?
That's if it doesn't.
Might as well use it.
We'll use as much as we can, but we have the potential in a transfer to sell some of that if we get this allocation that was originally mentioned.
I think also because of the stage 2, or if it was a stage 3, the state requires us to have something in our dialogue showing that we're doing some kind of reduction. We are required to do that. So we have to show, I know it's in that code somewhere, you have to show that you're doing something. So we're gonna put out a notice in the newsletter just saying, hey folks, stage 2, try to watch your watering. Voluntary. If you can't, you can't. Or if you don't want to, you don't want to, but there's no penalty.
As long as it's voluntary and there's no penalties.
Well, and again, to Director Fust's comment,
It's just confusing.
it is confusing, I get it, and that is one of the reasons why, after reading through our water, drought planning and water shortage policy, we need to go back and fix some of that stuff, because it really doesn't make a lot of sense based on the actual amounts. But we are required by state law to do something when we're in a stage two, thing. And one of the things that this district decided to do was have voluntary reductions and not have financial, implements to, to have more restrictive conservation. That's more under stage 3, 4, or 5.
I know that.
Yeah, so we're in this really challenging conundrum of having to declare some stage, and then I talked to Bella Vista, they're in the same kind of thing. If everything stays the same, we got enough water for everybody, so we had to reduce it to the least restrictive stage that complies with the state requirements. That's really what this is doing, and we need to fix this because the physical aspects of 35 and 75, we need to make that calculation to show that doesn't need to be even that restricted, really. We could have other things.
Well, I can see where you want to put it in there just to satisfy the state or whatever with the drought, but my suggestion is that agriculturists, well, use all the water you can.
Absolutely, absolutely.
All you can afford.
I would say so too, and then the beauty is, it's really clear. It's
The more water we
voluntary.
use, the better off we are when the next drought comes along.
Exactly.
So any other
I had a
questions?
comment though,
Okay.
just for the public's sake. We did agree to purchase the 500 acre feet of Lacala water as an insurance policy. But we also directed our general manager to use 100,000 of the penalties we collected last year to help offset that, so that customers would only be on the hook for 25,000 of the 125,000 charge that we would incur for that water.
Well, that's a very interesting comment. I would just encourage the public to consider that comment to apply to item D of this item, of this.
Okay. I'm ahead of myself.
So restate it.
Now, we'll put it on the back burner.
No, it's a good thing. I mean, it's just, but we're combining the two.
Yeah.
And really the
We
drought.
really want to get this done first. I
We
understand.
really do need to get that.
Right.
So, Director Lincoln, any questions on this ordinance? Okay, I'm gonna open it up to the floor. Any questions? This is a public hearing in regards to the drought ordinance that we are rescinding the current, ordinance 2022-01 and declaring a stage 2 of the drought planning and water shortage policy. So, any questions, concerns on this ordinance itself and what it's gonna do? Okay, last call.
I would just like to know what it's gonna cost us per acre foot as a customer.
You're gonna find that out at the next item.
At 17 cents per 100 cubic feet, I used 8 acre feet of water.
Well, it isn't going to be that, Sandy.
No, so,
Okay, so I'm gonna bring it back to the board then, and we need a motion to, rescind ordinance 2022-01 and accept ordinance 2023-04.
Should we do those separately though? No? Okay.
No, this is one item.
That's fine.
Yeah.
And then I move that we rescind the 2022-01, was it? And adopt the 2023-04.
Yeah, just real quick, perfectly stated, except really approval of this ordinance rescinds it in the ordinance, so.
Well, fair enough.
Supersedes it, okay.
Right.
Do I have a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
So we have a motion by Director McVeigh to accept ordinance 2023-04 and a second by Director Lincoln. All those in favor?
Aye.
So it will say in 2023-4 that this supersedes prior ordinances.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. I didn't have it right in front of me.
I probably should have, too late, but I had closed that public hearing.
You've done good. And it's just me, I like having the public hearing open so that even my presentation, all questions of the board, including the public, are all part of that. I think it's a good thing.
So now we are on to ordinance 2023-05, which is the drought and water rates ordinance.
All right, well, thank you, Madam Chair, and as the board has done in the past, there's currently an ordinance 2022-02 that's in effect that has a rate sheet very similar to the one on the back, Exhibit A. And so in the ordinance of 2021-05 that was approved in August of 2022, adopted a new rate structure in conformance with the statutory requirements of like Prop 218 type stuff, and it included a drought usage rate. So that was to be calculated on the actual cost of the district to provide water, and it's upon a 30 days notice. So in other words, once the item has been adopted or approved, it is put into effect 30 days later. So in other words, this meeting and the approval, this is last meeting's review, part of that 30 days from the date of approval. Again, we describe our M&I water, our ag water, and all the rest. And there are some copies of this infamous sheet that I know some of you have seen in past years, both up at the board's dais as well as sitting in the back of the room. But just a few things I would mention. The cost of materials, chlorine, have definitely increased over the last year. PG&E has notified us that the cost of power is going to go up. And Bill, our chief plant operator, puts together a lot of these costs for the water treatment, because these are also what we use, by the way, when we bill Centerville, but these are the costs of actually treating the water. So it includes utilities, so there's an increase in this chart for that. And he's decided, even though it may be a little low, to keep the labor and standby and overtime at the same amount this year, but increase a little bit of the O&M, because there's probably going to be more testing and a few other repairs, like we just had an item with the power surge, etc. So that is that's part of the cost. So just for the board and the public, and it's in my background sheet, the current treatment costs for 23-24 are 56 cents per unit. So that's that is, that's just where it's going as it relates to that. So that would mean that, based on, the Bureau's M&I rate, the irrigation rate, you're still at 70, 71, 72 cents per unit for that. So when you run it through all these calculations, we come up with a drought rate of 87 cents per unit. That is 16% less than the current rate. And hopefully, if the Bureau changes their allocation and increases our allocation and says there's no more drought, then we can go obviously to the straight up M&I irrigation rate. We could run back here and make these changes to that in a heartbeat, and I would expect the board to do this anyway. But as they did in 2016, when the Bureau kept their allocation or added to the allocation, the board directed the district to go look for places to sell the water if that was a possibility. One of the things, just for the board's purposes, because you will see on this chart, under McConnell Foundation, there's 300 acre-feet identified as a cost. And so I wanted to explain that, as I've explained to a couple of directors that have asked this question. So yes, it's our intention to take the fines and penalties, $100,000, and use that to help pay for the McConnell Foundation water. So if you just say that 100,000 divided by $250 an acre foot which is what we pay for McConnell water, well then, that's 400 acre feet. So if we reduce the 500 down to 100 in this chart, I just remind the board and everybody else, all 500 acre feet of that are running through the treatment plant. And so we would then only be calculating a rate that would pay for 100 acre feet to be treated. So what I did was take the treated cost and get basically a per acre foot cost for treatment, which comes out to be very close to $244 an acre foot. Treated. So if I take $250 an acre foot plus $244 an acre foot, and divide that into $100,000, that purchases 200 acre feet, a little bit more, 202 acre feet of water. And that's why we put 300 acre feet into this chart. So again, just to kind of put it back the other way, if we said we're just going to put 100 acre feet in this chart and say the $100,000 goes to paying for just the raw water cost, then this rate, the district actually through property taxes would be subsidizing the treatment of that 400 acre feet of water. So that just hopefully, I hope that makes sense going through it verbally. But that's how, and the other thing too, on this calculation, what we did is you can see under C, forecast volume, we put the Bureau M&I as if, so in other words, this is a worst case scenario. So in other words, let's just say we get 0 irrigation water and 50% M&I water. 50% M&I water is 1132 acre feet. And so that's the baseline of how this was calculated. And I hope that makes sense. And again, please feel free, any questions, any thoughts, any adjustments, if the board wants to do something different,
Go
let me
ahead, you
know.
can start.
All right, appreciate all the work. Couple of things right off the bat. This can be difficult for the community and even board members to understand this particular chart. And I'm wondering if there's some way of designing it to where it might be a little easier for the average person to grasp. And then next, I'd like to see 2 columns added. We know there's been high inflation, that things are going really out of whack. Valves that were gonna be 85,000, 2 months later were 120,000, chlorine skyrocketing. I'd like to see an unanticipated expense percentage to protect the district from, underfunding them. And then the other aspect would be typically through breaks, through the backwash pond, through possibly even the fire department using it to suppress fires, there's a percentage loss of water. And I'd like to see that, and I know, what is it, Bella Vista is at about 8% in their calculations of loss. I'd like to see us at a minimum of 5% on that. And to protect the district on the unanticipated expenses, say 10%. What that means is we would take the 72 cents per HCF and add those items to the cost. So it's not like we're adding 40, 50, 60 cents. 10% of 72 is 7.2 cents. So it would be, that's how we would come up to the 87 cents per HCF. And would cover our bases so that we remain fiscally solvent. Go ahead.
You're saying that the 10% is already included here to get to the 87? He's showing 87 as a blended rate.
Yeah, but it should be already in there, is it not? Because we had the 10% in the ordinance, remember? We
Yeah,
discussed that at our workshop.
yeah, but I don't think it was
No, this was something we wanted to add to this chart, so that it was more transparent.
Can I make a comment about this chart?
Sure.
This is a spreadsheet that was used to, determine the rate when we went through the Prop 218 here.
Yeah.
And it was just, it was a part of the Prop 218. So I hear what you're saying, and I have to agree with you to some of these things, but I'm not sure we can change this formula unless we go back to a Prop
I
218.
understand where you're coming from, and that's a valid point. But I'd like to, if there's some way of doing it, I'd like to see some of that done.
So I think through the chair, I think both directors have a super good point. And I think what my recommendation would be, let's use this for this calculation for this ordinance, because truthfully, we need to get that number down from where we currently are, from $1.04, right? I mean, currently it's $1.04, right? Let's get it at least down to something here. And then what I would look at it is hearing if the board, all the board wants, give me direction to look at these columns, see if it's legally able to do that, and if so, how would it apply, and how would it be more clear to folks? Again, it is, you know, I think to Director Fuss' comment and looking back over some previous items, you know, it's definitely, you know, not as clear as it probably could be, you know, by having your cost of water and treatment down here at 56 cents, and then that gets rolled up into this upper part of the chart. But there is some clarity from your costs to your volume, to your per HCF, you know, cost, to then your treatment costs added in and stuff like that. And I think the Director McVeigh's comment, there's probably some gallons in here that are sort of hidden and need to be like exposed or at least clear. And we may or may not be able to do that. And we may have to do it at a rate hearing, or we may be able to just do it. I don't know. I can't answer
It needs
that.
to be looked at legally and see what can be done.
So I have several questions, but Terry, do you have anything? Oh, okay, so one clarification, and then a couple that I'm just off in my math. If we go to column B, where it talks about costs and excluding the Bureau restoration fee, what is the restoration fee? Is that the CVP, or is that 5 cents? What fee is the restoration fee?
That's off of that rate schedule from the Bureau.
This one right
M&I
here.
2405.
Is
Yeah, I think that title was incorrectly put there.
It was put as restoration.
I believe that includes the restoration.
That does
fee,
include the restoration.
But does not have.
Yeah, those.
Yeah. Well, it says excluding on okay,
I missed, oops.
okay,
That's a good one you
All
got.
right.
okay.
That's a good catch, because it was supposed to be not the PUD.
Correct.
Correct, not the PUD.
And that's not in there.
That was not in there, and it was supposed to say that it was not in there. Instead, it said the wrong thing.
Okay,
So this rate, the M&I and irrigation rate, is the 3973 irrigation base and the 1202 restoration.
right, and the 24 for the
And then the other
M&I.
one's 24.
Yeah,
Let's reiterate the Trinity PUD to people who may not have heard before. There's people in the audience.
okay, so the Trinity PUD was, it started out as a 3-cent fee per HCF, well, excuse me, it started out as 0.0003 cents per HCF, and at some point in 2010, the district came out and made it 0.03. And so everybody was paying 3 cents per HCF when it was just really overstated. And so we've been overpaying that for years. It then went up to 5 cents, and then at some point it went to 12 cents, but we were paying 3 cents up until 2020. And then it miraculously just showed up on our bills at 12 cents and was not approved by the board. And so we fought back as the public, we fought back on that, and the board then decided to remove that. because just at 3 cents of the water usage, it ran about $36,000 a year that we paid extra on that Trinity PUD, when it was only either somewhere between a $500 and $800 yearly bill. So we have prepaid that, I believe, in perpetuity. And so that is one of the things, though, that the district has to pay the Bureau. And so that is not on the water charges at all. We made sure that Trinity PUD fee of 15 cents per acre foot, it's by acre foot, and the district was charging everybody by the HCF. And that's why the big disparity in cost. So the 15 cents is not being charged to the public. Okay, my next question. Let's go to item 7, which says district wells. $532.99. Where does that number come from? Because if I go to my well producing current costs and I add those up, I only come up with $492, not $532.99. I'm a little slow sometimes. I gotta take my time when I go through these. So the questions I had yesterday, that didn't come up till this morning.
Well,
Otherwise I would have talked to you yesterday about it.
I'm showing a little more than that, a
I
little
did-
over 500. You've got your 470 on utilities, 27 on chemicals, and 15 on
Mhm.
labor and owning.
Yep, 492.
512.
Your fingers were wrong.
Okay,
Dang it, the heck.
that's okay.
470 and 15.
Is that?
Yeah.
And I would like to throw into the mix that I took a breakdown, and I thank you for that actual water usage chart you provided me with. I appreciate that. I took the actual bills for the last, 6 months of, or the first 6 months of our current fiscal year, and all the utilities for the well, and then divided that out by the number of acre feet. Now, you indicated that the well production charts ran from July 22nd to December 22nd, so that was really only a 5-month period, not a 6. So I rounded up from the 177 acre feet to 180 to try to adjust for that. It may have been a little bit more, a little bit less, and then I divided that out, and I came up with a significantly higher actual amount versus what we're seeing here.
Yeah, it's around 560.
By 74. But I found at the water treatment plant, doing the same thing, that instead of the 80 on this chart, it comes in at around 52, 53. So, and I'm trying to go by what I actually see,
Yeah.
and then do the calculations so that.
Again, all that is, yes, and I think, I've actually questioned our chief plant operator about his calculation of 532.99, because if you just look at what your next item on the agenda has for our cost for wells 1, 2, and 3, and divide that by about 107. I think the number was 177, but
It was,
you know,
I rounded it up
probably
because of.
I don't think we used any well water in February, and it may be that.
But possibly from July 1 to July 22 we did.
Yeah, well, that's what I gave you, was 177.
Right, okay.
So again, it's the actual energy costs alone are over $500.
Okay, so again, you still have this disparity between 512, and I see what I did, but I just don't understand the difference. But also with the utilities, if it's saying 470 per acre foot,
Yeah.
when you base it on the last 6 months, and what we spent, the 96,000 on the utilities, and we used 616 or 37 or whatever it was acre feet of water.
Except we didn't. We have to go and what the actual, that was that chart that I emailed to you, forwarded on to you. And we actually only used during this 6-month period, 177 from July 22
Okay, and how much,
2022.
and how much was that then?
177. I rounded
okay.
it to 180.
So out of the $96,000, what did that equal then per acre foot?
537,
537?
yes. Plus then your chemicals, your
Okay.
labor, O&M, and it came up to about 574.
Okay. What?
Unfortunately.
Oh, so you use real numbers?
I use real numbers
Got it, okay,
Yes.
that's what you were saying.
for that and
Okay.
actually the treatment plant, and that's where the treatment plant came in lower than the 80.
Okay, I may have to accept that.
I spent some time making sure I
Okay,
understood.
so now let's go back to the McConnell Foundation and the way you calculated it. Here's how I calculated it, so tell me where I'm wrong, okay? What, well,
Sarah.
You shouldn't ask him to
Well,
tell me.
well, no, because I'm way
You're his
off.
boss.
I'm way off, so obviously I've probably done something wrong, but what I did was I went ahead and took that $250 and times it by the 500, and came up with, whatever I came up with.
125,000.
25,000.
Okay, and, yes, and then I went ahead and took the 500 and calculated it out at the 56 cents per HCF.
And there's 87,000 HCF in that.
And that is, and no, there is, I thought 217.
Oh, 217,500.
800, 217,800.
Okay.
So that came up with $121 and 968.
Because you used
So then,
26.
so then I took out the $100,000, because the district paid that, and came up with $146,000 and change. And then I divided that by the HCF, and it only came up with 68 cents, and then plus the 5 cents for the extra fee that you have on the other side.
Okay, except then you've gotta, remember, you've gotta add back in the cost of the water, that 25,000.
No.
Are you talking just HCF?
No, so I took I took, see, this is awkward. So I took the 500 acre foot, times it by 250,
Right,
came up with the 125.
correct.
Then I took the 56 cents and times that by the HCF of 500 acres, and that came up with 121,968. Added those two together to come up with the total cost of the 500 acres. Took away the 100,000 that the district is paying for, and it left 146,968.
Okay,
And you divide that then by your HCF, the 217,800,
correct.
to get your cost per water.
But that's just the McConnell water, and we have to do a blended rate because.
I'm just that. The other way to look at that is to see what the actual cost of the water would be for McConnell, 250 times the 500, so it was $25,000. And if you divide that, then you get a rate of like 12 cents. And then if you look at just and add that to the 56 cents, you get 68. And that's an easier way to look at it. So I'm not sure with your calculation or am I missing something? See, because I'm way completely off. And that makes a big impact if we're gonna compare a $1.18 blended rate to 73 cents.
Well, $1.18 is not the blended rate, that is your rate for your McConnell water.
Correct, but, well, it's blended because we added the 56 and however you calculated it.
Mhm.
Did you run that 118 as the McConnell water, or is that the well water? Because on this chart, it's under the well water.
No, it's
No,
122.
122,
Am I looking at the wrong one? I
123.
got 2023.
I think the bottom
Because I'm
blue
looking at
shaded
one-
says
Oh,
118.
you're looking down here.
We're looking up top.
Okay, and I was looking down here, which is the well chart.
So I just tried to simplify it by just saying, how much does the McConnell water cost us? 25,000,
And then you take your treatment costs,
right, the 56 cents,
okay, and that comes out to
uh,
121,968,
right?
right? So
correct?
you add that to your 125,000,
Okay,
right?
and you
And
subtract out,
subtract 100,000.
Yep.
Okay. so
you get
146,
146,968,
Okay,
divide that by,
what are you gonna divide that by?
Should be
aren't
like
I,
217,800.
yeah, aren't I
The
dividing it
number
by
of
the
HCF.
HCF?
Okay,
And that gets me 68 cents.
right. So you divide that by, where is it?
And the reverse, 217,800.
And I apologize, guys, that I just,
This is what you're up there for.
And that gives you your 68.
For that percentage of the total water purchased, just that percentage. Because,
46.
yeah. The way I broke it all down was as I looked at the cost of water separately, M&I, Ag, McConnell, and the well, okay? Then I looked at the HCFs, so how many HCFs, okay? And broke that down. Then I started doing the multiplication, because the well water does not get water treatment, so you don't pay the extra 56 cents per HCF on that 87,000 HCF, or 200 acre feet from the well. So you have to
Yeah,
subtract
right.
that
Yeah.
out.
Yep.
And so when I did all those calculations, added in the rate here, that 4.1% reserves, along with the calculation for the unanticipated, which was the 10% that was in the ordinance, that's where I came up with my 86 versus our director's 87 cents,
yeah,
by blending them.
but we have to go exactly what the cost is for McConnell Foundation first. We have to
Okay.
go exactly what the district well water is. And when I even do the district well water, I don't even come up with $1.22. I just took your $532.99, I took that figure, and I don't even come up with $1.22.
Just take that 532 and divide it by 432.6.
Well, I times it by 200 because we have 200 acre feet and
You can't do it that way, that's true.
I came up with the total cost.
So basically, if we ran that, and I ran it at 533 because it was a penny,
Right,
it comes up to $106,600
correct.
if you ran it all out.
Well, 598, but
Okay.
okay.
And then you would divide that by the 87,000 HCF that are in that 200 acre feet.
87,120, okay?
Okay, I didn't do the 0.6, I just ran it at
Okay,
425.
and what do you get?
Okay, let me finish doing that. I have it written down here somewhere, but let me finish that off real quick. So, don't do that to me. $122.5287.
Okay, what the? So we take 87,120 divided by 106,598. I get 82 cents.
Okay, run that again though. You're dividing 106,600 divide by 87,000. Okay, you're dividing the reverse.
Okay,
Okay, so switch that back around. 106,600 divided by 87,000. You'll come up with your 122 point
so so then see, that's where I was talking about doing it backwards, that's what I did.
Yeah.
So, but I didn't do that incorrectly for the McConnell. Okay, that's $1.22.
Yeah, same.
All right, okay, McConnell's the only one I got an issue with then. And then how do we come up with the blended rate? We're just adding the 3 and dividing by 3?
Oh, no, you can't do that.
I know you
The
can't.
percentages of water.
I know, that's what I'm asking.
And that's why when I ran my calculations, I took the actual cost of each component, okay? Made a total of that, then took my components of the HCFs, okay? Subtracting out the 87,000 for the wells. And then divided that into the cost, and that's where I came out. And that came out to 72 cents per HCF.
But you see, if you take these three figures that he has here, let's just 0.72, and we're just going to plus exactly what he has here, 1.18, and we're gonna plus the 1.22, and then we're gonna get 312. We're gonna divide that by 3. That's $1.04. Maybe that's where they came up with before. I think I used my figure of McConnell water and came up with close to the 82, 87.
Because you're looking at 132 acres.
Okay, so where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? I do not like the McConnell Foundation price. Somebody else show me that I'm wrong, and so we can move on. Should it really be?
Can I just throw something out here? If we buy 500 acre feet of water from McConnell, you take that 500 acre feet and you divide that by 436.6,
So 435.6.
you come out with $1.14 or $1.18 in this case per HCF.
Not including chemicals,
Yeah,
labor,
well,
O&M.
that's just
That's
the
just the
water.
water.
Just the
correct.
water. Then you take that, okay, and what he's done here is instead of putting in the column C 500 acre feet, he put 300 acre feet.
And he explained why.
And he explained why, so that it to take care of the extra money that we're getting back.
Right.
Or we got from the penalties.
But I don't think that
But it
calculation.
still works out to 118 or 140. I come up with 140.
Okay, so,
Still works out to that,
Well,
no matter what you say.
I think for-
no, it doesn't.
Yeah,
No,
sorry.
no, well, I'm entitled to my opinion,
You
you're
are.
entitled to yours.
Okay.
So can we agree to accept this at that, and if we come up and realize that is incorrect, and Beverly might be correct, can we come back and,
Well, of course we can.
Well,
We
sure,
have
we
to
can.
anyway. If
From that.
the Bureau
Because-
changes their allocations, we have to.
Well, I think regardless of that, we can figure out,
They're doing a good job.
I think your calculation that the chair is doing is really a different method to the way I did it. And the reason why I did it the way I did it was to make it fit into this chart to get us a calculated rate that makes sense. And again, calculating it a different way. I didn't quite do it the way you described it, so I'm still not sure if I can explain to you where it's right and wrong. I can't right now. But the other method that I did, it came up with 88 cents one time, and then came up with 86 because some other thing, or 85. So my suggestion is we move forward with what we have as the rate, and that you direct me to look at the columns, look at seeing whether it's legal and how we can handle the columns, and figure out how that $100,000 that we've contributed through our reserves of fines and forfeitures and penalties, how that can best impact this. And if it's different than what we adopt today, we'll be back before you in April to fix it.
I think we're spending too much time workshopping this. And
It's a good thing, it's not a bad thing.
No, it's not, except we did do this a couple of times already.
exactly, and then when you analyze it more, you come up with just more issues. So, Dennis, study this, please.
I'm studying.
Okay, well, go home and study it some more.
Yeah,
But,
I want a report tomorrow night. 6 o'clock.
We need to hear from public.
yeah, we will. So the other issue is just, I wanna know how they were able to blend it, on how they figured that portion out. And that's just for knowledge. I don't need,
Yes.
I don't need to know that tonight.
Well, it's basically done with, you've got a total of 1,532 acre feet. And so the 1132 is a percentage of that, and that is your weighted cost at 72 cents. And then the 300 acre feet is a percentage at $1.18, and then a percentage, the 200's a percentage at $1.22. But I will make sure that I get that more explained to me as well
Okay.
by the chart Excel spreadsheet guru.
They're all three different weighted amounts.
Yeah.
Because
Sure.
they all cost different amounts.
Correct. And we're using as,
And that's why it has to be blended,
well, sure. and
not
then it has-
divided by 3 or anything.
I realize that. It was just that it was coming up almost about the same, and it was like, well, wait a minute, so. Okay, anyone from the public would like to speak about this drought rate?
Has it been fun listening to us?
Or you woke up?
Yeah, sorry. No, I think it's great that you guys are workshopping it. I don't have a problem with it happening during a meeting, so I just want to say that. I do agree that we should move forward with the drought rate because we need to get it in place, get it rolling, get it going. And obviously with the Bureau, we never know what's gonna happen, so we might have to revisit this in a month, 2 months, 3 months, and fix it again. Obviously, if the math is wrong, let's get it fixed sooner versus later, but I feel confident enough that you guys have tried your diligence on making sure it's right through the formula, because it doesn't make sense to me either. So I'm not a math person, but I think we should go forward with it and, revisit it if it is wrong or if you have any changes coming down.
Thank you, Kate. I just wanna make sure we're not overcharging the customers.
I agree.
Anyone else?
Well, just real quick, if you do not act tonight, we will be overcharging them because we're
Yes.
at a
Oh,
buck
yeah.
right now.
So we have a towing cost here on 86 or 87, It's a towing cost as far as I'm concerned.
I'm fine with leaving it what the formula currently says.
But you deserve to get an explanation of why your way is right or wrong or misinterpreting.
Correct, yeah.
I get it, I know.
Yeah.
But I did something similar to what you did, but I reverted back to what I described in the end, so.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out.
Okay, any other questions? We'll bring it back to the board. So this is item 6D. This is ordinance 2023-05, the drought and water rates ordinance. Need a motion?
So moved.
Okay, we have-
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Director Fuss to accept the drought ordinance, or the drought and water rates ordinance, and a second by Director McVeigh. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No, motion carried.
I would just real quick before we jump to the next item, also mention another reason why this will come back to you at some point, because if the allocation stays as it is, we're gonna wanna put in the irrigation water into this calculation as well. And that'll push our rate down a little reasonably. So there's a lot of reasons why this is a great first step. Let's get out from under the $1.04 that it's been at. Let's get to this 87. The expectation is, we're gonna have to come back and adjust it.
Let's hope they adjust us up.
Well, that would be awesome. All right, next is the item related that we mentioned before on our activity report. So this is our mid-year 6-month budget review at the 9th month of our fiscal year. But the good news is we actually are able to look at one and really see some things that are important. So again, we are doing everything we can, because I really like this term, granular, because if you recall from the old buck system, and I only had to look at a couple of those reports, and that it was not super clear, there were misappropriations of funds in different places where it shouldn't be. We laughed all the time about the bank maintenance fees that had a million different things put in there. And then just the way the charts were, it was really challenging. So for your manager looking to do three things. One, to provide the board and the community as clear of a picture as we can. We're getting closer to that, to our financial status. We still got room to change and improve. The second thing is to be better at tracking our monthly expenses as they compare to our budget, so that when we get to times when it looks like we're gonna be expending more than what our budget was, the board doesn't have a policy on this, but I think they should, that, you know, GM comes back to you and say, hey, we're gonna have a big expenditure, it's gonna go over our budget that we thought. Here's why, and here's why we should move money from another place or not. And then the third thing really is, I'm very anxious to develop our 23-24 budget. And so, you know, I really want to get before you in May a preliminary budget. And so this is the kind of information that's really gonna help make, hopefully that's a more accurate budget. So if you look at these 5 pages of the QuickBooks does it as a profit and loss budget versus actual. So just as a quick reminder, some of you recall, and I probably can't put my hands on it right now, what our previous approved budget looks like, but it's, you know, it has all those different charts. And so what we did is we made in the budget line every attempt to put in the budget amounts to the correct attribution or accounts that we have now in QuickBooks. In some cases, they didn't fit. In some cases, you're going to see some like other utilities, others, for is a good example where we got $337,000 in the budget for that, but that we have now the expense, more granular, broken out by the wells, the booster, the internet booster, blah, blah, blah. Well, the previous budget didn't have it broken out by that, so QuickBooks kind of lumps all the budget into that. So next year when we do the budget, each one of those line items will have a budget, and they'll add up to the 337 or whatever it may be. So I want to start really at the top under revenue. If you look at the base rate and water sales, you can see that in our budget, we had a calculation of revenue for that. And that's broken up on the budget side of things. Oh, let me just remind you that the budget column is 1/2 of the yearly budget. So again, that's 1/2 of that. So there's progress through that. So I'm going to point out to you a few expenses that came in that will look like it's well over the budget, but that's because they're one-time expenses that occur in September, October, and that, you know, the budget was for the full year. So again, if you recall from the activity reports, there's January and February that have not been, July and August that have not been reconciled. So these water sales and base rate aren't completely accurate, but if you combine the two, you'll see that our revenue for the water sales and base rate is $1,088,000, which is 82% of our expected budget revenue on that. We do have, as mentioned before, we've gotten over $100,000 in penalties. That's why the board can designate that, but that does impact our yearly budget, by the way, with revenue. And then, so if you just kind of go to the revenue customer accounts, we're actually at 96% of our projected revenue for budgeted revenue, 1.278 versus the 1.336.
Can I interrupt for just a second to clarify for everybody? This budget amount was based on collecting 85% of the revenue. So we collected 96% of that 85%.
Well, and let's,
Yeah, but a lot of that is made up because, we actually have, quite a few penalties.
Well,
Yeah,
yes,
so you can't
yeah,
count
we
the
did- I
penalties.
didn't count the penalties,
Yeah.
right?
So, but it's a good point. I mean, in other words, that is what the budget was meant to have. So then we have under revenue, you might recall in the budget, there's revenue water service, there's Centerville, O&M, and a few other ones that I'm not really positive how all those play out, but, we'll have, if you have questions on those, Melissa might have an answer for that. We're pretty close on our Centerville, revenue. We're probably, as of December, we've actually received a few payments since then, so we're probably caught up to that. And then the other thing too, that the district's, previous budget had, which is really confusing to me, so hopefully this will help clarify. But there was a other revenue, section that had the filter plant, the recycle backwash, the state loan, the backflow maintenance charge, and the WINAC repayment charge. Now, you might recall, those are all part of your bill. And in the budget, they had that as sort of this other revenue, and then they had this total revenue and total income. Well, that's not operating revenues. I hate to break it to you. That is designated revenue because it is supposed to go from here right into the savings account because it's got to pay back all those different things. So we cannot count on that as able to operate off of because it's designated revenue. But if you do get down to sort of your gross profit, total income, leaving in the designated revenue, we're about 85% of budget. So there obviously are some water purchase expenses. Right now, all that shows up is the McConnell water purchase, and then, but you know, in the next report, you're going to see other water purchase that we purchased from City of Shasta Lake, and as we get further into the year, you're going to get Bureau water costs, right? Because we're paying the Bureau for water. And then under the expense for water supply, we've included the WINAC repayment cost. In the budget, it was kind of just hanging out there as sort of an extraneous item. Again, you can see you've got your water treatment now, get into your actual division expenses. Your treatment has utilities and supplies and safety equipment.
Can we go back to page 1 though? And just have Melissa explain to us, and I think it was explained, but I don't remember. Let's take, for example, the state loan repayment charge. It's supposed to be $1 per customer, and we've got cents in there. So how do we get cents when we collect $1?
Because that's how it gets entered in the AR system when they, for whatever reason, Fry is putting in cents. I don't know why. I would have to do an audit of the system, and it's been very difficult to get correct reports out of. You can put in all sorts of, different things that you want from a report into the screen that pops up when you ask for an AR report, and I can get a different number every time just by clicking one different box each time. It's very frustrating, and so that's the only answer I have on that one. Thank you. You're welcome. I'm sorry, I don't have a better answer.
Yeah, we've asked that a couple of times,
Yeah,
just trying to figure out why.
Yeah, it's just odd. Okay, so,
No, that's good,
Okay.
it's good, I appreciate you reminding me, it was on my list and didn't do it, but I just would mention on page 2 that, you see your chemicals for your treatment plant are above budget, just because of the cost, the supply chain issues, etc. There are some things that still need to be attributed to this, but the treatment plant is actually currently under budget on expenses, right? They're only 78%, they're 22% under budget. And then yet, when you get down to repairs and maintenance under the distribution, you've got a big repair and maintenance other, which is $123,000, which is obviously quite significantly above the budget. And let's see if I didn't miss one. Okay. So do a detail, so if you have any questions in particular of that, there's a couple of items that are pretty significant in this, expense. Obviously, we've had some breaks, back in the early September, late August timeframe. There's some accident expenses. There was one large, pipe that we had some supplies for that we were able to use. And so to replace that, was very expensive. It was something like $7,000 or some crazy amount to actually get that piece of pipe in case we had another break for that size.
Rebuilding inventory.
Yeah, and so one of the things that we need to do on this repair and maintenance, which is so high, is that a lot of that is actually inventory, needs to go into inventory, so that needs to be broken out a little bit different than the actual, like, O&M stuff. So we have to do a better job on that. The other items as you go down, so again, if you get to distribution, if that inventory calculates, that's an asset, right? So that's supposed to be not necessarily, even though you're expensing it in this time, it's part of your asset, there's an offset. And then when you get down to, the distribution, obviously, the 200% over its budgeted expenses. Utilities, wells and boosters, and some of that's where, if the public was listening, you heard the conversation about that 96,000 divided by 177 acre feet of water during this period of time. That's where you get close to at least a bare expense number for the cost of well water. But again, because we have the common water available, we got into the fall and we didn't need to run the wells as much. That expense is well under the budgeted expense, but I just wanted to point that one out to you. You get over to administration in general, we're definitely over the budget on utilities. But again, I'm not really sure where the budget, how they calculated utilities at $15,000 for the whole year, because it's pretty clear we've got PG&E costs for this building and all the rest of the utility costs for this building, including, gas and then, now the answering service, that probably should be under customer accounts. I don't know, but again, these are things that we'll continue to work through. There's a good example of one of the things that wasn't called out very well in the previous budget, which was related to insurance. It was all lumped together. So right now you see the big vehicle insurance charge. Well, we made one large payment, we paid it for the year, and so then we won't have any more payments under that. So you see that we're well over budget, but by the time we get to the end of the year, we're going to be pretty close, a little bit more than what was budgeted.
While you're there, what's the bank service fee?
Their bank charges,
$6,503.
so some of them are bank charges, some of them are, credit card charges, late fees and things like that.
Oh, okay.
So,
That's the extra 3% or whatever it is.
yes,
Is
yeah.
there some way to cut that down?
We are trying.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, one of the things we've talked about is the potential of using the beginning of the fiscal year is maybe looking for a different bank and maybe a way to deal with some of these fees. Centerville, they're able to, their bank charges the customer the fee, and it's just taken out of the customer. It doesn't have anything to do with us.
Right.
And so one of the things that I don't really like is the fact that we add the fee to the charge, then we take in the money plus the fee, we then attribute the money minus the fee to the account, and then we wait around for the bank to send us the fee charge, and then we can take it out of here and send it to them. And that,
Kind of crazy.
it's just crazy that we do it that way. But under the municipal software, that's an example of a one payment for the Fry software that happens at one time of the year, and then we've got a budget that's half that because it's only for 6 months, and it'll catch up to it. There's also, on the page 4, which is the employee benefits costs, there's obviously some items in there that still need to be basically attributed. I don't know if Melissa, you have anything on those, but we don't have our CalPERS retirement expense. So these are liabilities that we have to show, both that already are showing in liability but aren't showing in expense yet. And then I think I mentioned this before, under 6,000, there's the payroll expense and salary and wages. So if you recall from the previous budget, under distribution, treatment, and others, there was that labor, O&M, or overtime and on-call expense under each division. So what I think we're gonna do is try to get it so that we can have this 6,000, have it, the account broken out by treatment, conduit, distribution, customer accounts, and admin, just as a way to make sure that we're tracking each one of those division labor costs. I think at the end, as was mentioned before by the chair, we've got this really cool thing down at the bottom called other expenses and a suspense account. As a manager, nothing gives me the chills more than those. I hate those other things and miscellaneous and all that other stuff. But as Melissa has reported to the finance committee, these are bills paid either through the box system in this fiscal year in July, which they weren't supposed to, but they may have done that, or bills paid through QuickBooks, in which the contract bookkeeper didn't know where to put the expenses. So we got to go back, figure out where this 37,000 is supposed to roll out into the other expenses. I think in the end, what I would just mention, and welcome any questions from the board. I think the district, this basically shows that we broke even the first 6 months of the year, in my opinion. We have, if you take out the net income that has 155,000, and you take out the designated income, because that really shouldn't be calculated in this. That's why on the expense side, we need some sort of expense that says that that's shoveling it to the savings accounts. You're at $4,600 in the black. Now, as mentioned before, we've got some good revenue that's coming in for the coming 6 months. We've got $300,000+ worth of property taxes coming in. We've got the Centerville updated, now that we've got a process and a bookkeeper that's keeping us on track. We're actually getting Centerville bills sent on time, and what this is reflecting is we were a couple months behind by then.
So,
and then we also still have the reconciliation for them as well. And we obviously have water this year, so we can actually deliver some water. So that I think we're in a reasonably good condition. I would just say that this, as you can imagine, is going to be much more helpful for the board and I to put together a budget for the upcoming year as well.
you mentioned having switched to QuickBooks and possibly a third quarter balance sheet. I'm looking forward to seeing how that breaks down, because in here, when I started doing percentages for the state fund, or backwash, the percentages paid bounced all over the place, from as low as 43% to as much as 92%. And I know early on, July, August, whatever, even maybe September, some of that monies were misallocated, so it never really got to the line item spoke. So I'm really looking forward to seeing where we are, what percentage of the customers, especially that are paying the base rate with the add-ons in their water, we're actually collecting, to see if we need to do something about that. I know we did a round of notices for shut off and whatnot, and that was pretty effective collecting money. It'd be nice to know if we need to do that again, you know, and where we are with that, so that the community as a whole is not subsidizing people who just don't wanna bother to pay.
Right. Well, again, as Melissa will test, there's still a few more months to reconcile, and there's still more to do on that. I'm definitely hoping that in April, we'll have another one of these, and we'll have, I'm planning on having updated activity reports, July through December, activity reports January through March, and then another one of these, which will basically be a 3/4 of the way.
Okay, any questions from the board?
I have, questions, yes. But my one question is, what was the recommendation from the finance committee on this?
On this?
Yeah.
To approve it as it's stated.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, we don't
Because
need,
it's as accurate as it can be right now.
Get that? I'm sorry.
It's as accurate as it can possibly be at this time.
Yeah, okay.
we're not approving it though, it's just a review.
Well, yeah, it's a review, but
Okay.
We know
We reckon-
there's still errors in
Right,
it, just
yeah,
because we
yeah,
can't.
okay.
and they have fixed a number of them at our
Good.
recommendations.
I will forego any questions. I can always talk to Paul later on about some of this stuff.
Yeah,
Pam?
Pam Beaver, I was wondering, and maybe this isn't the place to ask, but since our crop report has been completed now, if it was going to be able to get Sally back on delinquent accounts, since we still have, at least 9% of our accounts are delinquent.
that's a very good question. I think the crop reports took so much energy, Sally said I quit. No, I'm just kidding.
Pretty much.
She's burned out.
She's
And,
taking a
so
break.
She's taking a break. She's taking a break, but,
Well deserved.
we've got some other volunteers that might come in and help us with paperwork, and maybe we can get some more work on the delinquent accounts. But yeah, we do need, once that was done, I did ask her to, okay, and she did, she made some calls last week, and we got some people paid and to pay up, and, but I gotta just say, I mean, Sally's been unbelievable. I mean,
Yeah.
she's put in 40+ hours a week for months and months and months, and,
Probably a year.
so really, you know, that's not really healthy, and so, you know, I'm encouraged her, and I'm happy that she's gonna take a step back. We'll probably call her back for more stuff, but we've got some other things for other volunteers to work on.
So along those lines, is there a need for anybody from the community to volunteer at all? I know in the past.
We do have somebody that already has, they're coming in next week, and we're gonna work with them on, some tasks. As you know, we're behind on our board minutes and binders from the last 18 months. We've got, the minutes, you know, we finally got them all updated. We were up to date on minutes, but not, and it's on our website, they're not in our binders, like
Right.
back here and other things. We've also got, some policies and procedures that you're gonna hear about later from that committee that need some community and volunteer help to look at. We also really could use a volunteer to help out with making some calls on some of these delinquent accounts as well. And, you know, so we've got some of that, and, so we got somebody coming in, we're gonna work with that first, and then we'll figure out what more we need. Again, as I've mentioned to the board, with such turnover in new staff, I really want, you know, the new staff to do all of their job and know what all their duties are, without sort of sometimes the challenges of coordinating with the volunteers and stuff. It's a better way to ascertain what we need volunteer work for.
Okay, Okay, so we're gonna refocus back with the mid-year budget review, or is there anyone in the audience that had a question on the mid-year budget? All right, bring it back to the board, and so it's just a review, and
Just a
that's,
review.
Yeah.
okay, and we're moving on.
And so we need, it's an action item.
No, it's not.
No, I don't think so at this
Right
point.
here,
The action is, we
it's an action.
applaud the staff.
Oh, well, it doesn't on the agenda,
Oh,
Yes.
no, it should.
so that's where you gotta go by, is the agenda. What was it asking for? Approval?
Yeah, my action was to accept the finance committee's recommendation of, and approve the mid-year budget review.
Yeah, well, we can't, it's not on the agenda.
That's what we're gonna be doing.
You might have wanted to, but
It didn't hit that.
yeah, it didn't hit the agenda.
That's right. All right, well, the next item is, review and reconfirm the auditor engagement letter with Portman McNulty Sakerin for the audits FY 21 through 25. In my background report, I just mentioned that, Director Fickus had, noticed on, the minutes from, I believe it's, the August, 2021 meeting, that it wasn't clear if, the audit was to be for just FY 21, or if it was to be adding FY 21 to their proposal. I think I mentioned in here, from what I can gather, looking back on the notes and minutes and talking to the staff at the time, the RFP, which I found, was for FY 21 through 25. The then administration kind of confused it and said, well, maybe we should keep our old auditor for FY 21, and then they left, and then it came finally back to the board, and I think even Director Fust at the time said, hey, I noticed that they were asked to only do FY 22 through 25. I think it should be 21, and so boom, it went forward. So that's why the engagement letter from the auditor came in, and you can see on it, it says you requested audit finance statement district as of July 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, and that was what was signed. And also they have, on their other letter, they actually have the rates laid out. And as mentioned, they did the FY 21 audit that the board accepted back in December, and they've already started on the FY 22 audit. But I think Sheriff Fickus can probably explain more why we thought it would be good to make sure it's all in the open.
So my recollection was that the board was not going to even approve it in August. And so they then finally came back and said, well, we'll do it for 1 year. I went back and listened to the tape in August of 2021, and it was just 21, in my perception. So to be very clear, let's make sure that we are on the record that we have approved the whole 5 years through 2025. So
That was my understanding,
Yeah. And I think,
even though there was some confusion about it.
yeah, and I think to that, Madam Chair, I think just by having, this will be now in the minutes, this engagement letter.
yeah,
So I think the other thing that probably wasn't great was, again, whatever the confusion was, it got signed, and they went off and started on their audit, and the district went off and started doing whatever they had to do, and didn't come back and actually say, we signed it, here it is, let everybody know.
right.
And now it is, it's in the minutes, in perpetuity.
5 years anyways. Okay, so we need a motion to confirm or reconfirm the auditor's engagement
It
letter.
doesn't say you can make a motion here.
Well, it's on the agenda, action item?
It doesn't say it.
Well, review and reconfirm. So,
It's on.
Did we just reconfirm? Do
so,
we actually have to vote?
You
I don't think so.
know, we can by consensus direct
Yeah.
staff to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
I think by just having it on here,
Yes.
Okay.
having that discussion, having
All
it,
right.
we've done that.
It was meant to be five.
If somebody wanted to argue about it, they can. But
It's all good.
You got me.
Good job, Arthur.
Well, no, you bring up a good point,
Yeah.
because it should spell out on the agenda exactly what we need to do. And that was just a whatever on the agenda.
Yeah, well,
And we need to be a little more precise about it.
all right.
But you're right, you
Your
brought
secretary will take notes.
Even though in the staff report, it
Yeah.
does say
I know.
that it's an action item.
Yep.
But it has to say it on the agenda.
Okay.
I feel very sufficiently scolded that we will make sure that there's discussion / action on these items. My apologies.
All right, we are now to 6G.
Gee, okay. The district received Director Jones's resignation. As you can see in the item here, he also sent this in to the clerk of the Board of Supervisors, and so we were notified by the clerk that we needed to announce in the public notice of vacancy and start accepting applications for your vacant seat, and that you have, as a district, 60 days from the date the board is notified of the vacancy, for the vacancy. Now, that's under Government Code 1780. In looking at, and again, maybe for our committee for policies and procedures on this, it looks like the practice of the board has been that at a meeting, whether special or regular, you have to accept the letter of resignation, and then that is then your opening of the period of accepting applications. Now, if I go and the non-lawyer, just the little general manager, read Government Code 1780, there are districts that would, on March 3rd or 4th, the day after they receive this, they would post a notice. So we need to talk about that in the future, maybe, if we want to change our practice. But our practice is, it comes here, publicly notice meeting, the resignation is accepted, and then you provide direction to post the notice of vacancy. Doesn't matter whether you provide that or not, it's happening. and this is it, this is our notice of vacancy. Based on the time frame that we have, it's my suggestion that we ask for applications to be provided by April 7th at 5 p.m. and 2023, and then that we would bring this to the board at the April 19th meeting for appointment. And I will be signing that, and we'll be posting that in multiple prominent locations. And then we will also make available this application for appointment, which is similar, slightly updated with the dates that the district has used in the past.
And then will we have an opportunity to put it in the newsletter also?
Well, yeah, the good news is this gets to be put in the newsletter that everybody is going to receive in their bill prior to the 7th.
And then
And if you want, we could change it. We could make it April 10th or whatever. And I'm open to that too.
so the letters will get out to the customers by when, the bills? Well, we don't ever get it the first or second, that's the problem.
You could extend it to the Friday, what's the Friday before the meeting?
Well,
Take off 5 days, 14th.
you could make it the 13th of April, which is a Thursday,
Yeah, maybe something like that.
Yeah.
At least it gives us a few more.
because in the past, they've put the applications in the packets.
And in the past, they allowed it to be, the closing date was like 5 p.m., like Thursday or 5 p.m. Friday. So you had to either have it in the
Correct.
office or in the email
Mhm.
by 5 p.m. on the Thursday or Friday prior to the board meeting.
Well, since we put the packet together on a Thursday and Friday, how about if we do it the Wednesday?
Wednesday? April 12th?
12th.
Okay, the
Okay.
12th, okay. It
And,
gives a little more time.
okay, and then just, we do need to make sure then that we have on that application that it also says 5 p.m. And then there was a concern because at one of the meetings, all of the applicants never showed up, but there was like 5 or 7 people that applied one
Right.
time. And it has on here, attendance is recommended but not required.
It should be required.
Yeah.
Absolutely required.
So either that
Well,
line,
hold
okay.
on, pipe down out there if you want to speak. This is a conversation you should have.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
your application, you are the ones who have to make a decision on this. So, if you would like us to edit that, please let me know.
Okay, talk about it, folks.
Yeah, well, you put required on there, if they don't show up,
You don't consider
you
it.
don't consider it.
That makes the meeting
So
short.
attendance is required.
Mandatory.
Mandatory?
Absolutely.
Mandatory for
That
eligibility.
doesn't mean that they're gonna show up.
Well, no, but then they're not going to
They're
be,
not up.
Consider.
yeah. So attendance is, you want mandatory or just?
No,
It's required.
just is required.
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
I'm glad you put in there that they have to be a voter.
I
Yeah,
think,
that's
It's in there.
it's, again, the value of having it be required is, the plan is if you select somebody that night, we're gonna swear them in and we're gonna have them sign the thing, you know, so.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we get to interview them too a little bit. We ask them
Yep.
questions.
If you want.
So,
Oh,
we do. Public does too.
That's true, you do, yes.
Okay.
Any other changes or amendments? So again, what I heard was on the notice, we're gonna say applications are due by April 12th at 5 p.m. 2023. We're gonna modify the bottom section. It says that it'll be March 16th to April 12th. We might change that to March 17th, just give us a day tomorrow to do the edits. And then for the application for appointment to the special district, we're gonna change the due to April 12th to 2023, 5 p.m. And then attendance is required. Any other edits, changes, updates on this?
Does it say any place in here that you have to be live out here?
It should
Yeah.
say resident of the community, that's the requirement.
What we have is, appointee must be a registered voter in the district.
That's good enough.
So, I've seen other language that gets so long and convoluted, this is the easiest thing. That's your-
Yeah, I'm fine with that, I just didn't see it. So,
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, we don't want somebody from Bella Vista coming in here.
no.
Well, they could if they wanted, yeah.
Anything else on that? Any other comments from the public?
I'm good.
Caitlin? Yeah.
Is that good enough for you?
That's-
Okay, we are now to, we need to
No,
No, we're
this
just
is
gonna-
really just.
accepting his,
It's an agendized item to accept it, to
Yeah.
notice the public. and-
Okay.
By consensus, we,
yep, we accepted it.
Okay.
All right, general manager's report.
All right, thank you. A couple of items just that, I mentioned in the report. Again, I printed out for you the current, lake levels as of yesterday. We still have a little bit of, want of water in Trinity and, but, still, it's looking good, it's looking better. I did want to confirm, that in talking to Bella Vista, that they did, enter into a water purchase agreement for 1,000 acre feet from, the McConnell Foundation. We have had, some turnover in our staff, since the last meeting. Our T3D3 resigned and took a position with the city. We have, as per our new MOU, posted the vacancy as for internal purposes, which we are complying with our new MOU. And so that's still kind of going through its process. We did have a new Distribution 1 operator their start, Will Flowers, have been here now 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks. We also have a new account clerk, started this week, Shannon Perry, and she's being trained by our, outgoing account clerk, which is actually quite helpful. I was going to mention that thanks to our volunteer Sally, we did submit our crop report, but it's kind of like the marathon runner that died after they said, finish the 26 miles, and she's like, oh, I'm tired. We also did finally get our workstations updated and installed. We're working on our phones and internet and other things to help make the district a little bit better at what we do and more secure. We did, since our last meeting, post on our website the MOU, all the updated job descriptions, a separate wages and pay rates sheet, including the general manager's employment agreement. So it is, I think the 4th tab over, down past the minutes and other things, there's employment documents. So please feel free to look at it. So that's part of the sunshine laws that we're doing around here, making sure everything is clear out there. We did have a conversation with Pace Engineering of the state to try to get them to finalize their signatures on that item, but the project is moving forward. And then I would, we did spend a lot of time the last couple of weeks getting ready, doing the March 1st planning and steering meeting, the March 8th finance committee meeting, the March 8th special meeting, and of course this meeting. So the last couple of weeks have been pretty meeting heavy. The last thing I just want to mention to the board is that before you leave, I will be handing you a couple of documents. As you know, my employment agreement, and everybody can look it up if they want, as I just said, it's on the website, calls for an annual review, which would be, in my case, in October, since I started the last day of October. But it also called for an initial 6-month review. And so that's going to be for April 19th meeting, we'll have a closed session. So I have provided you with a quick cover memo for a performance evaluation document. Not surprising, because I haven't seen them all the time, but I could not find anywhere where the district had done any performance evaluations of their general manager in the past that were based on a standardized form, and it should be different than your staff, right? The one I use for our staff to do their evaluation, or their supervisors, should be different than the one you're going to use to do this evaluation. So the purpose of a 6-month evaluation is, as I stated to the board, some of you weren't on the board at the time, was I wanted it in there to do a couple things. One, it starts the process, so the district starts doing things right, for want of a better term, but that they're doing performance evaluations of their general manager on a standardized form, and you start developing your criteria, right? So there's something to that. Instead of waiting a whole year before you get to that, let's do it at 6 months. The second thing is, it provides me the opportunity with the board to give you an assessment of the last 6 months of the district and sort of how things roll out and vision for that, earlier than waiting a whole year to do that. And it also gets everybody familiarized with the product that we're using. And just so the community knows, I mean, it's a pretty standardized executive level performance evaluation form, and it has some evaluation of some objectives or goals, and I put in some preliminary ones of what I think you wanted me to do. So this is our opportunity clarify those. And then there's 7 areas of, leadership and management and communication and all the other kind of things and how you're performing on that. And it's a blended score. So all that is going to be handed to you. I just wanted you to know that. And then, if any director needs more information from me, please let me know. But the other way in which these are handled is every director will get a performance evaluation form. They are all required to fill it out. And so in other words, it's both rating and notes and comments and input and stuff. And then they're all asked to give it to the chair. The chair then consolidates it all, averages out so that there's one form that has everybody's information and notes and maybe homogenized comments, or not homogenized, but I mean, I'm sure there'll be comments that'll be the same from multiple directors on an item, so you don't have to write it down twice, it can be once on the form. And more importantly, that makes it so that it's all one. And then the chair and I will meet, we'll go over that in preparation for the 19th, and then we'll be in closed session to finalize. So that's the process. That's the way districts do things. That's the way we're going to do things in the future.
It's about time.
Can I ask a question along those lines, please? And I don't know if it's appropriate in a public entity, but in a private sector, when I was reviewing managers at times, I would actually interview 1 or 2, 3 of the staff that individual managed and get their impressions and whatnot. Is that something that's appropriate here?
In public agencies, that is not done.
I didn't
on a
think so.
standard basis.
Yeah.
There's surveys,
Yeah.
I've seen surveys, but.
Again, we can talk about it in closed session if the board would like to have a different process for the evaluation, that can be done. The challenge is that there is both span of control and authority issues related to a small district and directors interacting with staff and getting that. So, so there has to be some way in which that's done differently than in the private. I've also in the private sector have been reviewed, and that method is very common, and that's okay. But in the public sector, it's not. And one of the things for larger districts that they do is oftentimes every few years the board would hire a consultant to review, and that consultant could then go and interview staff.
Right. We don't want that expense.
You may.
Yeah.
At this moment, you don't, but you may in the future.
When we get big.
Yeah. With finances.
Okay, so we're good on the managers and the
Yeah, thank you. Real quick on the operations report, you'll see kind of the level of the accounts that are delinquent for 90+ days, and the 60 and 30, the number of overuse penalties for February. So we finally got around putting a number in there, 17 accounts, 8,000. Of course, that'll be waived. I was going to mention kind of the update on the boil water stuff here as well, but I already really did that. I don't want to spend a lot of time on that. Bill provided you an update as it relates to some of the activities that they're working on. We also, one of the things mentioned here, we need to update our consumer confidence report. You might notice that the last one posted was 2020, I think it is, so we need to update that. And he's working on that as well. Really not much distribution. Roberta was gone most of last week, so I filled in some of these items. Mainly wanted to mention about the staffing. There's obviously changes going on over there in the staffing, and so your manager is looking at ways to make the distribution division as effective as possible, with opportunities to move up. So one of the ways you do that in both many divisions is, if you have a D3 that leaves, you don't replace them with a D3, you replace them with a D1 or a D2 so that they have a place to go. Obviously saves us some money on as well, but it also really gets you some people that, are motivated to get their certs and move up.
But in relationship to the water treatment plant, you've got your chief plant operator, but isn't it required to have a T3 there to substitute in?
At least,
Yeah,
a minimum
at
of
least.
T3, yeah.
So with our T3 leaving, we need to recruit another one then, unless someone on staff who is currently a T3 can move into that position or is willing to.
Right. So I think, we'll talk more about it, but definitely the two divisions, the treatment is deficient right now. And, we have a retiree part-time, Larry, who's very helpful, but, he's not gonna be a full-time employee and all the rest of those kind of things. So, we've had a vacant T3 and T4 positions, not the combined one. And so even if we have somebody who's willing to do the combined one, we need to get a T3 that's learning and training and all the rest of that stuff. So.
Now, Larry was brought on basically to give our chief plant operator a chance to use up that comp time, to use up some of the vacation accrual and whatnot, I'm assuming. Is he gonna be, well, obviously as a retiree, he's limited on the total number of hours a year he can work. What is it, like 960 hours approximately?
Yeah. So
at some point, is he gonna be thanked and let go, or is this something we might want to hold on to for another year or two?
I can't answer that for sure. It would be, I think, desirable to figure out a way to use the 900 hours and keep them as long as we possibly can. There's kind of a coordination thing on how you do it. I don't think we're gonna run into his hours issue. It's more, we really need somebody who's got a T3, T4 that can actually be there. And as we know, our chief plant operator was the interim general manager for a long time, so he didn't take any vacation for a long time. So
Yes.
again, trying to use the tools that I have in the MOU to help relieve the district's obligation for that is part of what we're doing, and obviously the part-timer is part of that calculation.
Definitely.
Can you review the job at Belinda in Happy Valley?
Oh, yeah. So that is the other one on here. So we had two things going on there. Just north of the intersection, there's a pressure relief valve that was leaking. So that the staff waited until the project in the intersection, which is there's a T there that does not have an isolation valve on it. So one of the challenges when there's a break on Linda or Happy Valley, I mean, we have to shut down half the same district to repair it. So Axner was hired to come in and to do a bunch of the work. Once they got down in there, they found out that the T had about 3 feet each direction and 3 feet deep of concrete. So it took a significant amount of time in the midst of a snowstorm to actually break through the doggone concrete. And once they did, they realized that the 16 inches that is on our charts actually has a portion that's 14 inches in there.
Oh.
And so we didn't have the down thing for the valve, so they had to refill it with sand, which will be very easy to take out, and we didn't have it available, so we ordered it. So it's gonna take probably a week or so before they get back in there.
There's a steel plate over it right now.
It'll be nice and wet.
Yeah, easy digging, yeah.
So, it's an old water system, we're gonna find.
That's an old. Now,
All
Chairman, I got a couple of questions.
Sure.
I'm under administration, Bill has, put in here that there were 251 accounts that were 90 days delinquent. What's the length of time before we, send out the letter to shut off the water?
Oh, well, that. Kayla, any idea what makes up those 251 since she was able to try to run this report?
I'm not sure why there's a larger balance for that 90 days. We've been trying to figure out why it almost seems like it's paying the most recent before
Maybe past due.
the past due.
Yeah.
And we can't figure out why it's doing that.
Can I ask in relation to that, is there a breakout on, customers who are paying for the base rate, the water usage and whatnot, and those that are just on the 1081? Do you have a breakdown of those? Because that would, we've had in the past a lot of vacant properties that have a meter, but it's not active. And I know we forgave or walked away from thousands of dollars because they were so old that they hadn't paid in 7, 8, 9 years.
So, again, based on the workload that we have around here, we have not got around to doing a little forensic on this. In other words, Sally did a good job of identifying those that were not 1081s, that they were currently getting water, and that they were trying to take advantage of the COVID no payment thing, and they just needed a call and the threat that, you gotta pay now, otherwise we're gonna shut you off, and they all ran, they're paying.
Yep.
Now, there's obviously a whole bunch of, there's some that are just on 1081s that have $3,000 on their account.
Exactly.
That's how long it's been sitting there. So, I'm not sure what the district policies are, and we probably need to clarify.
That'd be a good idea.
Again, we've talked about it. One of the things that I wanna see done is, okay, you hit the 90 days, you get a letter. You hit 120 days, you get a certified letter. You hit 180 days and you shut off. And then then you get another letter that says, we're gonna put a lien on your property. And then, then we tell them, send another letter that says, here's the lien's gonna be put on your property. Those are the kind of ways that I've seen it done in the past, and I think we need to do that. I can tell you that, we actually were just able to perfect a lien on a piece of property that was being sold, and it closed. I ran down and signed the paperwork on Monday in Reading. It closed on Wednesday, and we got a check Friday. That's Friday or maybe Monday or Tuesday from the escrow account, because we had something that obligated.
So to answer Erwin's question, so that I'm clear, he was asking,
How long?
yeah, so it's 30 days, isn't it? After 30 days, we send them a letter? And then we send another one in 60 saying we're gonna shut you off in 90? Is that what our regulations?
Yeah, that's what they are, but we have not been necessarily doing that.
We may want to look at that.
Yes.
As part of the policies that we're adopting.
So Pam, did you have a question on this that you wanted to ask?
So what was it, 1081, and somebody just told me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And I did have another question.
Yes, go right ahead.
Says the overuse penalty for February, a total of $8,100. Is that's not what was collected, that was just billed.
Say this again, sorry.
Overuse penalties February.
Overuse penalty for February, a total of $8,100.
So when the report is run, it asks that question, and all it is these are the penalties that were triggered by an individual water use that went over their 2019 or 45.
But not the amount of money collected.
Not collected. This is just what was identified.
Do you know if there were any monies collected for penalties in January? We have the mid-year, so we know that 112,000 and change was collected.
It's dropped off.
Yeah, it should have. It
drastically.
typically does this time of year.
I know there was a total given, but yeah. I don't
Right,
know if
that's
correct.
the bill, not the collector.
Correct.
And I think Kayla just reminded me that, again, this is probably a good one for our planning and steering as well to revisit. We do have policies related to our practices probably more than anything that talk about when things are gonna happen and when you were gonna get shut off. That stopped when COVID hit, and we really only in November or whatever, we sent out a whole, we're gonna turn you off now that we can if you don't pay, but we really haven't reinstituted the more regular notification process, shut off process, and the eventual lien process.
All right, so are we done with your operation report? Okay, so we are to our standing committee reports. So we'll just start with finance and Chair McVeigh for the finance committee meeting.
Okay. We did have a finance committee meeting prior to the special meeting on March 8th. Director Fickus and I have twice now workshopped some of the things. We've given direction to the staff. When we were looking at the mid-year budget review and trying to clarify and get it as transparent as possible for the board and the community. And they've done a pretty good job at it. Yes, we all recognize there's more work to do because it was quite a mess. I think we're pretty pleased with where it's going, and we look forward to the improvements. I did request, though, that if possible, that we do a second half year profit loss versus actual, so that we can compare the two 6-month periods, maybe separately instead of just doing a year-end look, so that we can actually see where the improvements, it's more transparent. Here's the things that we really fixed. This is where we really stand now, so we know where we were and what's happened, how we've improved. So I kind of like to see that.
Why do you want to do that?
Well, we know that this one has a lot of reconciliations to still be done.
So this is July, December, he would like to see one from January to June.
Correct.
Well,
To compare.
from last year, you're talking about?
No.
Current fiscal year. This is the first 6 months of the current fiscal year.
Right.
I'd
Well,
like
we will-
one for just
we
6
will do
months.
one at the end of the year.
Right, but if we do a full year one, it doesn't break it out and
Okay, I
show
see what you
me.
mean.
So he wants a 6 month.
So you want a 6 month.
If that's, I'm not trying to create extra work for the staff, but I would like to see it, and I think the community would like to see it also for clarity.
We will take that under advisement,
Okay.
and yes, you are trying to create extra work.
Well-
Don't try to say you're not. Actually, just on that, again, I would mention, we're in a big catch-up mode right now.
Oh, I know.
I do think a 6 month and 6 months is a good thing. Ultimately, when we get into the 23-24 fiscal year, we're gonna have monthly activity reports and then a quarterly budget to action. Then,
Very good.
that's my plan, so that way you have every quarter.
That'd be
The
good.
beauty of QuickBooks is, as long as the information is in there, hitting print.
Oh, I agree. One other thing on the finance committee, we started a workshop a little bit on the rate, draft rate and whatnot, and actually it's not in the description of the finance committee that we can do that. So I'd like the planning steering, when they meet, to add that to the description of one of the duties of the finance committee. To actually discuss or work on
Rates.
Rates.
Say rates.
Okay.
on rates,
Okay.
okay?
You think this goes with the
It's-
planning and steering, huh?
No, you would put it in as one of the duties of the finance committee.
Under the administration policy,
Right.
general administration policy.
Okay, so that way then we can actually act and do the things we're supposed to do.
We can do that.
So,
I pretty much covered it.
okay, so we have no personnel meeting, no ag meeting, right?
No ag meeting.
I thought we did away with personnel.
No.
No,
Yeah.
still have.
Not yet.
You recommended that.
Yeah. Trying to get out of it.
So let's move on to planning and steering. You guys had a meeting March 1st.
We certainly did, and, I guess I'm not reporting to the board because the board was already there during that meeting. And by the way, I will mention to you that it's allowed under the Brown Act for members of the board to come to standing committee meetings. It's not allowed for board members to participate. It's just they could be there as people
Spectators.
watching, spectators. And during that meeting, we, both Terry and I, and Paul, talked about the general administrative policies, went over those general administrative policies a bit, made suggestions, and gave it back to Paul, who is gonna work on it and bring it back to the planning and steering committee. Compensation policy, we already did that, but it's already been approved, I can't remember when you brought it up, back sometime back. And, reserve policy, reserve fund policy, we talked about that, and, made some suggestions to Paul, and he is, going to bring that back to the planning and steering committee as well. And then we heard from the audience and talked a little bit about what other policies for future meetings. And some of the things that were discussed were, a vehicle operation policy, a personnel policy. I think we already have that, but we need to look at it. Travel policy, petty cash, administration policy for petty cash, I believe. If you can add to this whatever you need.
No, that's fine, you're going to do it.
And we also talked about, and I'm not quite sure how this works, but talked about a competition policy, and I'm not sure. Yeah, I got it written down here.
Yeah, through the chair, if you don't mind, I think that was supposed to be like the competitive bid
Yes.
policy, which by the way needs an update, it's like
Yeah.
2008.
Okay,
Um,
that would make more sense. I was right.
That would be in the procurement policies.
What's that?
That should be in the procurement policies, yeah.
Same different, but this district calls it bidding policy or whatever. If you don't mind too, I would just mention, some of the components of the admin policy, that's where you could have that committee recommend, the changes to the number of committees.
Yeah.
Maybe eliminating one. So that would be, really helpful for that. And also, on that compensation policy, to, the committee chair, we've been looking all over the place for, what Director Lincoln provided. And we cannot find a signed copy of that.
Oops.
So, we will make sure that actually then Chairman Fuss signs it for our records. So,
Okay.
just a good thing about having a committee meeting is, we get to do a better job with our.
Scare all this stuff out. And then we also talked about the, next step is a capital improvement plan. And we need to develop one as time goes along. As we develop the, different policies and the general administrative policies, then we're working to a capital improvement plan that's gonna determine what we need for the future, how much it's gonna cost, and when we can do it. And we gotta do that, or else
Yes.
we're not gonna know where we are. I also, sent to the planning committee a memo that I put together on, some of the things we need to do in the future. And I passed that out to the people that were here. I don't know if anybody else got it. Some of you did, and the board members got it. And I encourage you to look it over and, take a look and see what it is that, strikes you about it and what, could be added to it, or deleted from it, for that matter. I don't think you can delete anything, but, it's up to you. Anyway, it's part of the planning and steering because we've got to look to the future. That's
So-
it, Madam Chairman.
Okay, thank you. So I have a question. If I have a concern with what the planning and steering committee came up with at their committee meeting that I couldn't talk about during this standing committee, when can I talk about it?
When it comes to the board,
When
like
that comes
right
to the
now.
board.
Okay, so right now?
Sure.
Okay,
Uh-oh.
In one of the manuals that we have, and I don't know which one it is, it talks about when you are doing like an MOU review, it is the general manager and a person on the personnel committee, so one of the directors from there. So I recommend that you don't do away with the personnel committee. I suggest that you combine it with something else, even though the personnel committee may not be doing much. In reading other areas and other districts, they actually combine finance with personnel.
Yeah.
So, and the same may be true that we do with the other one, instead of having, just planning and steering, maybe it's planning, steering, ag, that's completely different. But I just thought, perhaps when you guys think about things, think about maybe instead of completely getting rid of it, maybe combine it.
Yeah, I never saw that part.
Yeah, it was from another district that talked about, combining the two. The other was your reserves amounts, that you guys wanted to get rid of completely having any money amounts on the reserves. So I have a little bit of, concern that some of the designated reserves, is that the right word? I don't think that's the right. Restricted, reserves, you have to have a money amount. And so I'm just thinking maybe to be consistent, have an amount. I understand the concern that, well, how much money do you throw at it or put in it? So maybe that there should be just maybe an amount given to have. I don't know what the.
That's a good point, because in some of them, the restricted accounts, that's what we have.
Right.
We've got an amount of money.
Right, you have to have a certain amount, so I just didn't want to see it completely gone. Okay.
If I can add to that, please. I would like to see some amounts in some of these other accounts, capital improvement and whatnot. We figure out what a reasonable amount is. The 2008 ordinance on reserves did put in amounts that were currently in there and goals for the various categories, and I think that's not a bad idea. We had good reserves up until about 2016. They reviewed that ordinance, extended it, but then afterwards, the reserves gradually disappeared through not running a Prop 218 and increased expenses, payroll, whatever they were. And now we are down to capital improvement is what, $1,500?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we need to set some goals, realistic goals. Maybe staff can help us with some of that, or we can look at what other districts do. And then that's part of our master plan for 5-10 years out, to build those against potential problems. We know that the filtration plant has all but aged out. We know our distribution system has aged out. Obviously, we're gonna be trying to get grants, but some of those may be grant loans, and to have reserves there, we don't have to go to the community and say, Prop 218, we're adding $5 a month to your base rate or something.
The reserves are going to be, we are not bringing in enough money to even fill those reserves up, so.
But there are ways of gradually doing that, and that would be a question I'd like to, if I can take just real quick, a minute or two. Erwin, you were on the board when the district was approached about putting in electric generation into the Milltown conduit, but the board rejected that.
We didn't reject it, we just put it off.
Oh, you put it off, okay, but it never happened.
It never happened, no.
From
I think Dennis was involved in that. Weren't you involved in that, Dennis? Putting, generators in the water line.
What I did, I think 2 times I gave a presentation to the board about installing small hydroelectric facilities, because the water is going down the hill. It would just be natural, and then plus it would lower the pressure a little bit, and so you wouldn't be blowing the lines like you are. And what you would do would be to let the company build the facility, and then let that company get the revenue for like 7 years. And at the end of that 7 years, it's yours. You know, from that, time on.
So it was looked at, and then, and it was a good idea, but it never went as far as doing any studies on it. Because we got all mixed up with a lot of other stuff that was
Sure,
going
you were
on.
busy with other things that we
Yeah.
decided. I'm just wondering if it's not something we wanna look at for another source of revenue.
Yeah, sure, you put it in put it in with the steering committee, for the future. And the same thing with solar, you know, we looked at solar before, and put that aside because, we were looking at other things.
Sure.
Rate increase was one thing.
So, in mentioning solar, it doesn't have to be down at the wells, right? You could put solar here on this building and generate a lot of power, and it would pay, you would have a credit then, right?
Not anymore.
Not anymore what?
Yeah,
After
it's,
April
They've changed that now.
yeah, it's not super clear, but I do think one of the subjects for the planning and steering committee, especially when we're looking at planning, capital improvement plans, et cetera, are looking at things like solar, inline generation, or other alternative methods for revenue or expense offset.
Cutting expenses, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I just know that having solar down at the well fields, somebody's gonna steal it.
Oh, yeah, yeah, we want a lot of money.
Yeah.
You don't have the land down there to put it in.
No.
Yeah, you're right, we do not.
Now,
You'd have to acquire the land to do it.
yeah, I do have some experience in doing this, and the rules keep kind of changing different things. There was a time in which you had to have the solar at the meter, so you would have had to have it down there.
Okay.
And there was a time when you could have it off areas, and now it's changing. So, we could take advantage of HERPA being right next to us up at the treatment plant and, do solar up there, put it into a power company, like the power purchase agreement company up there, and then wheel it down here. So that way you would basically, you'd have to pay PG&E transportation.
Something to look at in the future.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Possibly
okay.
grant funded to do that, green energy type
Well,
of a
that's-
thing.
You guys are gonna be busy.
That's the idea.
Why do you think they want to get rid of the personnel committee?
But I like the idea of putting it in the finance committee.
Oh, you just volunteered to be on that?
And one other thing, Scott had a EAGSA meeting today.
Yeah, this was.
So wait,
Wait,
this is under board member items, we're done with this committee.
Oh, board member items.
oh, okay, board member items.
All right, now.
Oh, okay. Are we sure now? EAGSA, the Enterprise Anderson Groundwater Sustainability Agency that Irwin was on the ground floor with back in 2014. And he was there, and he spoke in open time, and I'll discuss that in a second. But they recognized his long service, and I joined in thanking him for his years of effort to get this off the ground because of the requirements of the state.
Yeah.
So, you know, they did a lot of work for a number of years to get us to that point. This little thing here is the annual report that they are required to submit to the state. Okay, they had Jacobs Engineering do this. The board, prior to me being there, approved up to $50,000 in compensation for doing this, which would come back to us at $8,333.333333 or whatever it is.
Max.
Anyway, max. We don't know what it'll be yet. Director Fuss, in open time, asked about the grants and where they were on that. It's round 2 of the grants. The decisions will be made in June, whether they'll, who they'll fund. There's $200 million worth of funding available. We've applied for 5 to 6 million of that, but they have received requests for up to 700 million. So a lot of people aren't getting what they're requesting. So hopefully, though, we have built, the staff have built a good enough case that we'll get some to mitigate our expenses for the EAGSA.
Luckily, we got ours in earlier.
Yes.
So that's a good thing.
Now, phase one was for the high priority or high vulnerable groundwater agencies, meaning greatest risk of ground subsidence, and we're in a medium. So it was, round two was supposed to be just medium, but because there was such a large group in the high, they included some of the high vulnerable agencies in ours. Now, this report goes through and talks about groundwater in each of the two basins, the Enterprise Basin and the Anderson Basin, each have approximately 5 million acre feet underneath them. They did wells. They have criteria like ground subsidence. If over the course of a 5-year period, the ground in the basin subsides by 6 inches, then it's of critical concern. The average on subsidence for this one was 3/100 of 1 inch. And that takes into consideration the fact that ACID got no water. And they flood irrigate, and a lot of that would have naturally perked in through the fields, and through the canals and whatnot, and the fact that we were in a particular critical water year.
Yeah, the drought.
2 years in a row, critical water year. So for our groundwater to have subsided 3/100 of an inch, it's very good news. I would love to build a business case over the course of time to where we can prove to the state we don't need to have a groundwater sustainability agency, and there's no need for the expenses and
original
whatnot.
plan.
Right.
To eventually go through several years of this, and then go to the state water board and say, see, we told you so.
Exactly. Yeah,
Come on.
we don't need you.
So we'll see what happens.
The other aspect, though, was I discovered in some of my research, and even talks with Chris Kellstrom, that ACID during the winter can open up their canals, let water through, and customers can flood their pastures free of charge. They start charging April 1st, so obviously this year doesn't make any sense, but in future years, and I've talked with a member from ACID, and they're gonna look at that. But, you know, it might be a way to help booster our groundwater levels. I'd love to see us not subside by 3/100 of an inch, but improve. Just the opposite. We're not subsiding, we're growing. So that's kind of what happened today. We approved it, and we're moving forward. It is available online. You have to go to the EAGSA, and then follow the links, and it's all there. It's too big for emails. I looked at what I got, and I got the scaled down version in my email, but they were nice enough to kill a tree for me.
Okay,
That's it.
all right. Director Lincoln, anything else?
I'm fine.
Okay.
Nothing,
You're
man.
good? I just had one question, and it was, I thought I read something that we were having problems with going forward with the pond replacement. Was there a regulatory issue with,
You're talking the state fund,
yeah, the pond?
backwash.
Oh,
Backwash,
backwash pond
yeah.
project.
Yeah, is something being held on that one?
The state and Cal OES and FEMA are still talking back and forth. And so that's really the only holdup. I met with Pace Engineering last month again. They seem to have all signals go from the state. So I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to explain this very well, but basically the design of the backwash ponds includes concrete lining.
Right.
And so that has been determined by Cal OES and FEMA as an improvement. And so their funding is for a replacement. And so we've said, well, why? So we said, well, great. So Pace and I talked to the state. The state said, that's a good improvement. If they don't fund it, we'll fund it. So we went back to Cal OES, said, okay, great, we'll take your money and we're gonna proceed, but we're gonna do the concrete ponds, not with your funding. They said, we gotta go back and determine whether or not we need to do an environmental review of your project with the improvement. And we said, you don't have to do an environmental review because you're not paying for it. And that's the state and the district's responsibility. And we'll do the review and just say that it's fine, right? I mean, we'll do the review as per CEQA requires. But if they go do it, it could delay it another year.
Yeah, see, I don't know where I saw that at, but I saw something that there was an issue, so, oh my gosh.
So, I haven't, other than telling you what I told you like a month and a half ago, which was, looks like the state's okay, everybody seems to be okay,
Yeah.
we're waiting for Cal OES. So that was the response we got from Cal OES last month, and it's so nuanced and complicated, I haven't really brought it up, but we don't think it's gonna delay us much more, but, and the other problem is we keep telling the state and Cal OES and FEMA, we're at $5 million for this project, you guys wanna wait another year and make it 6? How are you gonna come up with that? You're killing us here.
Well, tell the agency that's causing the problem that they have to pay the difference.
What's that?
Tell the agency who's causing the problem that they have to pay the difference.
Yeah.
This is the bill, you made us wait, and they can pay the extra.
That's exactly.
Your fault, you idiots.
Okay,
I know.
one more thing from Director McVeigh.
Update if you can on the FEMA money for the cleanup and whatnot from the car fire. I know Bill had to ask for extensions and they had granted them based on the fact that some of the work was out of our control. And I noticed that, if I remember correctly, we still had over, about 170,000 in that account? And so are we working on that?
I have no
Where we
idea.
are.
I don't have anything more than what you just stated, so.
Okay. I just don't wanna see us lose that,
Right,
because the clock right now.
yeah.
Anything else from the board? Anything from the public? Any other comments? Sure, Dennis?
I've got some, the manager review, everybody knows currently that you just do it on the star system, 1 to 5 stars. And then you go on Facebook and check the number of likes. That's it.
Oh, I don't know if I wanna do that.
Done.
Meeting adjourned.